Oh, you know what? I can do this myself. Sorry, I keep forgetting.
We got one of these, right?
Oh,
Is this the one?
no, I made you a copy.
Right here.
Did you print us the same thing from last night?
I did not because it's up to the school is going to take care of that. I did it for the
okay.
IT department.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
thought I lost it.
Okay.
I lost track of my mind. What I've done for myself for my, it's like, it's right here, why don't you have this?
Very nice.
Yeah, I had to pay extra for that. The copy center is more expensive. I didn't know that they were gonna charge me more for something.
Jamie, you ready?
Oh, I'm getting out of the way.
It's
Sorry.
okay. Want to give every possible moment. Okay. So I get to use this. It being 6 o'clock, we call the April 7th Finance Committee meeting to order. I have one request for citizen comment tonight from a counselor, so I will, not on the agenda, but we'll let Max on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maxwell Marangello, 127 Central Park Terrace. I just wanted to come tonight to thank you for all of your work on the Finance Committee. I heard you went to 11:30 last night. I know it's a lot of hard work, but I want to thank you for doing the dirty work and really digging through that budget and making Franklin the most efficient town it can be. There's 39 cities in the state of Massachusetts. Only one of them has a finance committee. It's a holdover from the town form of government. So we're very unique in our form of government, and I think we're better off because of it, because it really shows in how efficient and how much bang for the buck we get in Franklin. So thank you for your service, and thank you for all the staff people who have come here and take time out of their busy schedules to come and spend time away from family to sort of dig through the weeds. So and that's all I got. So I can only stay a little bit, but thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Mr. Helen, would you like to
Yeah.
plow through?
Yeah, through Mr. Chairman. So we're gonna do a couple follow-ups. I think there are some answers to some of the questions from last night, passports, maybe some investment income. I've got a chart. We're gonna go through the facilities real quick. I handed out a handout to everybody, but I also put it on the screen. So, and then obviously you have to pick up and do technology before we get to school. So do you want to give any updates,
Sure.
Carrie, before I go, or?
So, one thing that you have with you is we also had the OPEB trust meeting today, and I put on there in front of you is the statement and how the fund is doing and in the market and what its investment. So I provided all that information, and Tom, I also provided you with our stabilization fund at Rockland Trust, and I have one more report coming for you that includes our stabilization funds and trust funds that we have. We also provided the information Linda put together in regards to abatements. Jen, I sent you some other things.
I got it,
We can
thank
talk
you.
about that.
Yep.
Okay, and the other thing was the passport revenue versus salary. So we did run a couple reports, and I have another one here that we went from April of 2025 to March of 2026, and have salaries, expenses, and the excess revenue is over $13,000.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Sure,
Yeah.
yep. Thank you, Jamie.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, so there was a bunch of questions last night. We're going to go through the facilities budget again, but I wanted to put up really quickly on the screen, and I gave a handout to everybody. We thought it would be helpful to just emphasize one point, which is the final vote by the council, or any recommendations from you to the council, or vice versa, at the end of the day, are bottom line budgets. So if you look up in here in the corner, we started back in FY16, and we go each year, and what you have here is basically, what we have here is the final budget that was approved by the council in those respective years for both personnel and expenses, okay? And then we put the actuals there for those fiscal years. So you can see if you look across, and then we do the percent used. So if you just look at FY16, you can see that the council approved a 2.4 million expense personnel services budget, which is staff. And that year, they used 99.9% of that revenue. And if you look further down, you can see the expenses were at 4.2 million. And in that fiscal year, the town spent 4.117 million, or 97.96. There's a couple of anomalies in here where we had years like in the pandemic first year where we only used 86% of the budget, of the expense budget. But if you look across all of the expense line items, you know, particularly last year, we used 98% of that line item. In FY24, 97.5%. FY23 was 96%, and so forth. The reason why I added this is I thought it would be helpful for everybody as we itemize out water, electricity, plumbing services, contracting services, custodial services, goods that we purchase, cleaning supplies, wood, nails, hammers, equipment, whatever it is. A lot of these accounts you can't predict, obviously, to a T. And I'll give you an example. The electricity rate this year, at some point in FY27, we anticipate is going to be out for a renewal, but we haven't even started that process yet. We don't know what that rate was going to be. We don't exactly know what that's going to accumulate into. But we also know there are other accounts in there where, for example, like water, we may not need to water the lawns because they're already being watered, like this morning with our nice snow that we got. And in all seriousness, in previous years, and my intuition was correct last night, and I'm going to go back to the budget in a minute just to make sure we answer everybody's questions. Oftentimes in the facilities budget, one account is going to be spent way less. Another account may be in the red because we didn't anticipate something. But at the end of the day, what our facilities department has been operating under for the course of, since they've been merged for over 20 years, is do they have the money in the account at the end of the year? Do they have that money? So we may say, well, if electricity went up or stormwater went up or whatever one you want to use, building, plumbing supplies or labor costs went up, you know, there are other accounts which we may not use, and we may say on the year-to-dates. When you, at the Finance Committee, we present every quarter a year-to-date, right? So we look at every 3 months and we say after quarter one, what's our budget amount and what's our year-to-date? And we present those to you and we look at them and we check in them, and Evan does them on a monthly basis at the budget tracker to make sure that all of our expenses and our bills are properly paid. I would note that 2 years in the last 4 years, because of the cuts that have been in the facilities department and because of the inflationary increases that we've seen from labor and to all the utilities and all the other accounts, I've had to send out a memo twice saying to the entire staff, including the schools, we don't have any more money, we're done, we're not going to be able to spend anymore, so if something breaks, we're just going to have to deal with it being broken. And usually we leave a little bit of a buffer in there to accommodate for May and June. So we're in that position right now, and I just wanted to highlight that at the end of the day, some of the numbers that are going to be in a budget at an itemized level may not always be perfect because we don't exactly know how much water we're going to use. We don't exactly know, you know, some of the services. We don't know when things break. We don't know if a divider at the school breaks. We don't know if a light breaks. We don't know if something breaks. We could go a whole year and budget for light replacements and never have to replace a light. To Ryan's point last night, traditionally up until we've felt these budget squeezes with inflation over the last several years, historically we do exactly what he suggested last night. If there's a capital project of $30,000 and we have excess revenue at the end of the year in April, May, or June, right now traditionally pre-pandemic, we would go into the list and say, okay, let's go take one of the items off the capital plan and let's go fix it and use that money. So what's articulated here in these expense items also reflect that. So while we may have said in FY22, just for example, we used 99.84% of all expense revenue, I'm guessing, I'm just illustrating my point as opposed to the exact specifics, we probably went in one of those years and probably did a couple of capital projects at the end if there were savings throughout the course of that year. Where you traditionally see this the most is going to be on personnel expenses. When a custodian retires or leaves, It may be a 3-month or 2-month or 4-month draw until we hire somebody to replace them. Well, we've saved that money in that account because somebody's retired, say, in, October. We may not replace that position to January. And so we have surplus revenue in that expense account, and we may go back and say, okay, well, we need to fix a bleacher at the schools. It's going to cost $6,000. Why don't we fix that capital item while we can right now, while we have the revenue that we have? So that's another reason why a lot of those numbers up there are at the 99, 98, 97, 94, 95%. You'll notice year after year, facilities does not give back an overwhelming amount of free cash. Really the max you'll see on these lists is only a couple $100,000 where they give it back at the end of the year. And so I thought this might be helpful to everybody to look at a 10-year history on the personnel and expense sides of things. And just when you look at the overall line items of just those two pieces, we do maximize out those budgets pretty well.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Or not yet?
Yeah.
Thanks. So my question is this, makes sense.
Yep.
I think when we started yesterday, we talked about trying to minimize our free cash, right? Using free cash to balance our budget. So in the event that we do that and we're able to put it in a place where we don't need to use the free cash to budget, and there is an item that pops up that's higher than what we expected or a need for light bulbs or whatever, there's still an opportunity for us to transfer funds from free cash throughout the year.
Absolutely.
So that's not, it's not like we have to go high now because we can't access that fund later.
Correct.
Okay,
You
I just
could.
wanted to make sure.
But you could.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do that. On the same end, the costs that we're seeing, to Kevin's points last night about electricity costs, about gas costs, about a lot of the other costs, what you're going to find in these line items, some of the line items that were questioned last night, I know folks focused on a couple of the ones that went up, like the water, and a few others that went up, greater than,
Significantly.
say, a few
Yeah,
thousand
40%.
dollars.
Yeah.
Like the equipment and maintenance.
Right.
But when you look at what we're looking at, he pointed out something last night about inflation with not only electricity, but what he may not have mentioned or it got lost in the shuffle is, hiring a plumber is not cheaper than it was 3 years ago.
Right.
A plumber's hourly rate. A lot of the money we do, I think there is maybe a misnomer, not among the finance committee, by the way, so this is just kind of for the record. We do have a plumber, we do have an electrician, and we do have a carpenter. We have 3 trades employees that are on staff, but those 3 employees basically keep up with the general daily work order triage. They don't come in here and do HVAC work. They're not doing the larger plumbing projects. They're not doing the larger electrician projects. They're not doing the larger carpentry projects. So a lot of the increases that you saw in here on building maintenance services or equipment maintenance and a variety of other things, most of those accounts are higher because we anticipate, as we have for the last few years, that those costs are going up. If you look at the overall expense budget, despite a couple of those accounts, because many accounts also declined in cost, right? If you look at the telephone account, that's going down because our lease is phasing out. We're also paying for some voicemail accounts and some other things that eventually will start to phase out. We hope that over time, that's an account that we would hope in FY28, for example, we wouldn't need $153,000 in there. We would only need $100,000. So we're trying to also whittle down accounts that are in here where we don't feel like the services are needed anymore. That being said, if electricity goes really way up, depending on where the global market is, which, again, if I could predict that, I wouldn't be here. I'd be retired in Hawaii already. In all seriousness, there's at least a buffer, there's at least a cushion somewhere else in the facilities budget that can help pay for those offsets. I hope I don't need to really illustrate very much how much the inflationary, tariff-filled, geopolitical environment affects the facilities department significantly. And you'll talk about this a tremendous amount tomorrow with DPW. You notice on here the waste disposal line item went up $50,000. We'll talk about waste disposal because everybody loves to talk about trash and recycling. Well, that's a huge cost increase that's coming to our budget, certainly in the future. The budget in DPW tomorrow reflects a fuel cost that we budgeted a couple months ago. I don't think I need to illustrate to any of you that fuel is probably going to be a lot more expensive than what we budgeted. But when you're looking at facilities and you're looking at DPW, you still want some level of cushion because if at some point you can't pay your bills and the council or the community has decided to spend all the free cash, then you really don't have many options later on down the line to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So when you look at the overall budget, I understand some of the line items in here, and we did try to restore clearly some of the costs that have been lost over the last several years from budget cuts. The finance committee or the town council or other stakeholders may disagree with that position, that's okay. But from our standpoint, we want to still make sure the facilities department has the revenues they have, especially given the turmoil that we're likely to see in some of these accounts down the line. I will acknowledge in the water account, like I had mentioned, historically in 2020, I think 3 times maybe in the last 7 budgets, when we've had to make cuts, one of the areas we've tried to cut is watering the lawns, irrigation. The high school is the most notorious one where I think twice maybe, or maybe 3 times in the last several years, we had to make cuts. We said, okay, maybe we're just going to let Mother Nature take care of things, and we're not going to use any irrigation, so we cut the budget about between $50,000 and $75,000, and we just said, okay, April, May, and June, we're not going to water any of the high school, middle school properties, right? Or we're just going to try to not water any of the lawns on municipal properties as much as possible to try to save money. That's maybe an area in which some of the people that want to make some reductions could sit there and say, maybe that's an area to look if you don't want to water any lawns. However, when you look down the series of accounts on equipment maintenance and building maintenance, some of those accounts are going to explode. And if you look at the, hold on one sec, Tom. If you look at FY25 expended for some of those and FY24, you'll notice in equipment and other contractual services, we spent $475,000 in FY24, we spent $412,000 in FY25. Well, the FY26 budget went down to $286,000 because of the budget cuts last year. We're proposing $430,000. We're proposing that to get back to the original amounts that were there before. And I would note that a majority of these monies are going into our school buildings and our school properties. And so, some of these accounts that you're seeing some of those bumps up in that were acknowledged last night is solely due to what we anticipate is still going to be a high level of demand to fix things in our buildings that we don't know are going to break. On the flip side, if you look down the bottom, you look at mold remediation. Those of you that have been around a few years, I know Natalie and George probably recall this, the Remington Jefferson School had some issues around mold. If you look at FY24, we used that money actually in the other expenses section, but then because the issue became persistent, we actually created a line item of $75,000 to remediate that mold, and now because we've done a really good job on that and the situation is controlled, we're downgrading that estimate to $25,000. So it's kind of, there's a lot there. But we wanted to try to answer some of the questions that were there last night, some of the reasoning behind it, with some of the historical numbers, and just try to hopefully have everybody understand a little bit of the bigger picture. So, Tom, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. In regards to like water and sewer, is that a funny cut? You may cut it here, but don't you cut the revenue side?
Water,
as we look at things, don't we bill ourselves?
we're billing ourselves.
So
However,
if you cut the water over here, then you have to cut the revenue, so it's really zero at the end of the day in the budget.
I don't know, man. I mean, on the one hand, like, the water rate increase went up 8% this year.
Yeah,
The sewer
right.
rate didn't go up, right? So, yeah, but if we don't spend it, here,
You don't get the revenue on the revenue side.
it's okay, but it goes to free cash.
But
But our water budget's fine, so
It's
we,
zero.
but we're not using,
Am I right?
but we're not using the service.
I know, but on your revenue side, you have a line item for,
Oh, in the budget, not in the
on
water
revenue
fund.
budget.
Yeah,
I'm assuming that revenue includes billing hospital, excuse me, town departments, right? So if I reduce the expense of the town department, I have to reduce the revenue side, so it's zero. Am I reading that correctly?
I'm going to agree with you. I'm not sure I follow exactly what you're saying, but
Yeah, not technically, because the water and sewer is a enterprise account,
Yeah.
so it has nothing to do with general fund. It's its own entity.
Yeah, but it's used to help, it's used somewhere in the budget, am I correct?
in the water budget,
Yeah, okay, so I reduced.
not the general
all right,
fund, so you can't cut the general fund and transfer it over.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, in the entire budget, it's a zero-sum game.
If you want to look at it that
Okay,
way.
fair enough.
becomes restricted.
So again, if we cut over here, we have to
Right.
cut over there.
You can't-
So it means
You can't
nothing.
spend it on anything else.
But,
All right,
but,
I'm just saying, you can do whatever you want with that number, doesn't mean anything.
Sure.
But then it becomes.
Do we, and I'm concerned with the electricity budget and the gas budget.
Yeah.
Are we underestimating, should we probably put a good number that we think is gonna be there as we deal with other issues?
really hard to say, right? Like, 4 years ago, in FY '22, I believe it was, so before, in FY, probably 18 to FY '21, we were operating under about a 10-cent per kilowatt electricity rate. In FY '22, when inflation was at 13%, right, we had to go out to bid, which was, in my view, a really stressful and awful time to go out to bid on electricity because of the geopolitical environment, which we're dealing with today, where inflation was up at 12, 13%. We were anticipating at that time, National Grid was looking at a 20, 25 cent plus, I think at one year they were at a 33 cent rate for residential homeowners. We went out to bid, and the advice that we got from our consultant was to do a one-year deal to get the lowest rate possible, because the prediction from experts was there was a recession coming. And we wanted to be in a position to let inflation come down, let the recession take hold, and then we're gonna be able to get back down, instead of having a 20 cent per kilowatt rate, we're gonna end up having a 12 cent, whatever the numbers were at the time, I'm sure you can follow.
Yep.
And we ended up getting a 13.9, I believe it was, rate for a 4-year deal in that environment. And despite the advice of our consultant, I went with the 4-year deal for price stability, right? Because I said, and you can look across the board generally over the last several years, and you'll see a pretty stable electricity cost for 4 years. In my view, we protected the municipality from that huge one-year cost spike that went up, where it was a $760,000 one-year increase in FY '22 when we went from the 10 cent to the 14 cent. But then we never had to really go up any further, even though the electricity rates in Massachusetts were continuing to skyrocket over the last 4 years. Our electricity rate number would undoubtedly be much higher today if I had not signed that 4-year contract and had that price stability. That's a good story. Now, I look at the same environment we're going into now. Are we undershooting that number a little bit? We could be. But we've created also a buffer in some of these other areas that if that reality comes to fruition in December, January, or February, when we enter into that new electricity rate that we may have to do, no one in this room can try to tell me that they can predict where this summer is going. And I'm sorry. Like, I mean, we can all have an opinion, we can speculate, I get it. I just read while I was having dinner that we're trying to obliterate all of Iran. I don't know what that means for the Strait of Hormuz. I don't know whether other world leaders are going to come together. I don't know if these people get sick of this and finally reach out and say, we're going to do something about this, we're going to complain to our politicians. I have no idea. And I don't think anybody 2 months ago would have said, we'd be sitting here looking at this right now and saying we'd be looking at $4 or $5 gallons of gas, right? So are we undershooting this? Possibly. But I would also say, 6 years ago, we dealt with a global pandemic. We didn't see that coming. When you have those kind of geopolitical factors that could drive that budget up higher, every city or town is going to be in that boat. And we're going to be looking at that through a different lens than, maybe a couple $100,000 here if we're undershooting.
Okay, so we're willing to look at this back in December or January and say, whoops.
I think you're going to look at it probably back in November when you do the recap, in October and November, and we're going to say, okay, where are we at now? By that point, we'll have worked with our consultant and said, what are rates looking like? The other thing in here is, if you propose to cut the facilities budget on any of these other accounts, even if, and I'm not necessarily, I've spoken out against lawn watering, right? we may say, let Mother Nature take care of our lawns, and if they're brown, they're brown, if they're green, they're green, like, let her do her trick. On the other hand, if we go in and we want to trim some of these budgets to make up for the deficit, we may be cutting our nose to spite our face, because there may be a buffer in there that we may be able to absorb that electricity cost if I'm fortunate enough to get another, hopefully, long-term contract, or maybe a one-year contract where we can help buffer some of the geopolitical issues.
Now, have we looked at buying in, I hate to use that word, into a solar farm? There's a new solar farm coming, Maplegate.
Yep.
And one of the criteria they look for customers is those customers that are gonna be around for a while, i.e. municipalities, i.e. hospitals. Have we had our consultant look at getting into that to get a much lower rate?
How much do we want to get into?
Solar farming.
So we currently max out all of our net metering credits from the solar farm on Union Street, and there's one on Mount Street. So from a municipal perspective, everything you see in all of our buildings and schools is dragged off that solar farm over on Union Street. That solar farm on Union Street, where the Nuns property is almost double the performance of what they expected when that came online. They expected a 6 to 8 megawatt, that's performing at 11 to 12 megawatt. We had a problem for years. I don't know if all you want to get into a whole tutorial on net metering credits. I'm sure George is like, no way, Jose. But if you know net metering credits, we had a heck of a time of trying to even invest all of our net metering credits, and had to get special exemptions from National Grid because our green energy was overperforming beyond belief. All of our net metering credits, by the way, paid for all of these LED lights in all of our town and school buildings. They helped all of our street lights be converted. They've helped with numerous other projects. All of the not all of them, but a lot of the EV charging stations that you see. We ended up getting some of our bills during the pandemic paid for. Part of the triage of the pandemic costs were paid for through net metering credits. So, in our view, solar's completely maxed out. It's not even a choice anymore. We've done a really good job on it. But it's a great question, because I think a lot of people at home would probably want to know that. So.
Similar question on the natural gas. Do we also have a locked-in rate that gets renegotiated at a certain point in time where we go out to bid? Or is that like we're paying spot prices throughout the year to?
Yeah, we'll, you know, when it comes time to negotiate, we will. Right now, our supply rate, we're locked in through 2029.
Ah, okay.
So
that line item then shouldn't, other than usage, that shouldn't really
more
move
confident in
that
that
much.
line item,
Okay.
sure.
Yeah. And hopefully that'll be consistent for some years ahead,
Yeah.
depending on usage, obviously.
So, Jamie, I appreciate background, for sure. And like, I get what you're saying about like, maybe throw this whole thing out and it's buffering, but it seems odd still that two particular line items that I think were brought up last night have an inordinate amount of the buffer put in them. Like, was there a thought process that went into that? And it's the other contractual services and the water. Like, was there some project that led to those two line items? Like, just saying how I would have done it if I was just buffering something, I would have gone in and instead of gone up on every single one 5%, I would have gone up on every single one 8% or 10% and said I needed to buffer because I don't know where it's going to be. But the way it's done implies we think there's something specific on other contractual services and water. Is there, or was that just like dump it in one bucket because we don't know where it's going to be?
So Kevin kind of mentioned this last night, and I think when we were reviewing a lot of stuff today, I think one of the areas of improvement we are going to do is the expense categories are very poorly drafted in terms of the actual verbiage used. And as we were looking back through and doing, pretty much spending half of our day today with Evan and Carrie and John and Karen Tullock, who's the admin in the facilities department, we realized a few things. So we're going to take on this project once the budget season's over in terms of, because you said other contractual services, and that's actually the best one to use. What the heck does that mean? Totally get it right. Hold on. So historically, people have to recall back in 2004, this entire budget was in the school budget. Okay? And when Mr. Nutting and the council back then moved into this building, right? At the time, there was one director, right? There was very few additional other support staff. So I told you this last night. Mr. D'Angelo is here, not related to Jen.
Thank you.
Mr. D'Angelo, you're welcome. I knew that would come up, so I thought I'd get ahead of it. So Mr. D'Angelo, Mike D'Angelo, was our former facilities director, and I said this last night, everything was in his head. And those who knew Mike, those who are watching at home, there might be an old counselor in here, a former one, will know it was all in his head. So when things transferred over, he was just the maestro who pay this out of that, pay this out of that, oh, electricity's over what we predicted, pay this out of that. And there probably were a series of bad habits of like where to go here. Then you enter with what Kevin said last night with redistricting. And then there's another element in this where I think you're trying to look at different accounts of where you're paying for things. And as facilities changes in terms of the needs of what the schools need, things are not properly probably deposited into the appropriate account. So what we need to do is go in, and equipment maintenance couldn't be a better example. So what we're going to do is, and we talked about it as a staff today, and I just don't know that I can get through it like in the next 6 weeks because we have a lot going on and there's a whole variety of reasons. Is we're going to go back and we're going to try to reclassify, re-edit, and re-title what these are. So for a long time, and Karen was saying this to us today, if you look at building maintenance services versus buildings M&R supplies, well, what were M&R supplies? Maintenance and repair supplies. So wood, nails, hard, fast items that you need, steel, Daddario plumbing, whatever, would come out of those accounts. But there was a method at one point to Mike's budgeting where he's like, he knew exactly what was being paid historically out of different accounts, and he goes back because he was hired in 1996 or something in the school department. So from his perspective, there was like accounts here and he knew where everything was. But I said to them today, if it's wood, we're going to call the line item wood, right? If it's plumbing supplies, we're going to call it plumbing supplies. If it's a municipal building, it's out of plumbing supplies. If it's a school building, it's a plumbing, it's out of plumbing supplies. So we're just going to try to consolidate these account number titles and make sure it's a little bit more easier to understand of exactly what's being paid out of what accounts. Because ultimately what you have is you have multiple HVAC accounts, and HVAC should just be its own account. I just want to be clear though, despite all that, I just want to be very, very clear. The overall expense line item account is still only going up $300,000.
Sure.
So while I can sit here and nitpick, and I mean this sincerely, like I can get in here and say, wow, I don't understand this, I don't think this is right, I agree with that. Like I totally agree with that, right? However, we still need to make sure that money is in our budget to pay our bills, to fix things when they're broken, and so forth and so on. A $300,000 expense increase, if you look at even down the bottom here, where you look at the aggregates,
So
you can look right here, Ryan, and look at FY24.
That's not the question at hand. Like,
Right.
I don't have objection to a $300,000 increase in the facilities budget.
Right.
That's not the objection. The question is there some implied project here
Right.
that's falling in that line item? Because we have a big cost, and you kind of keep moving away from those line items. But why did we put it on that
Let's just go right to the
item?
line items then. We'll go right to water. I'm not moving
Yeah.
away from the line items, Ryan. I've explained last night that there's an 8% water increase in the water budget. And I also said that we're trying to bring back some of the water numbers that had previously been there to deal with the services. If that's not a priority to the community, that's okay. Like, I'm not saying that.
But, like,
When you
what
go to other
services?
contractual services, right here, I just explained. In FY24, we spent $475,000. In this year, we spent $412,000. We cut the budget last year. We're proposing to bring those back. There's no one project that's driving that.
So what's
But
our-
what's driving that is the cost increases to hire people to fix HVAC projects. What's driving that is we're seeing more things breaking in our schools and our municipal buildings that we need to fix mid-year. It's not one project, but it's a series of things that are continuing to happen. Even the Davis Thayer School with the roof. So there are things that are happening to our wear and tear of our buildings that need to be restored. So in essence, while it's not one single thing that I can point to and say, okay, in that line item, it's like, fill in the blank with whatever you want to do. It's the overall cost increases to the cost of doing business across generally the board. Some of those ones in there, you're right, like I agree, like only went up a couple $1,000s, and there is not any huge rhyme and reason to why it's going up a couple $1,000s other than the fact that maybe those costs, like custodial supplies, are becoming more expensive, right? Pest control is becoming more expensive. Like,
Jamie, if I may also,
Sure.
the 430 line item there for other contractual services. So we actually just signed our on-call service contracts for HVAC and plumbing services. ATC got the HVAC and PJ Kennedy got the plumbing contract. PJ Kennedy also does some mechanical work for us as well under those. But the contract for HVAC work was estimated for an annual $350,000 potential, cost per year. And PJ Kennedy's was, I think the plumbing contract is for $150. So obviously that doesn't equate to $430. It's a little bit higher, but as Jamie shared, some of the mechanical costs are also elsewhere. Building maintenance services, HVAC, building maintenance services, plumbing. So,
Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud. Go ahead.
just,
So, I mean, that makes more sense, and that's where I'm, like, I feel like the answer, like, we're almost going too detailed. It was like a yes or no, and I feel like you're just saying no, which is fine. Like, that, it's not like no, there was not a major rhyme or reason, there's not a huge one-off project that sits in that line item. Like, no is the answer to that question, and that's okay.
oh, okay.
Like, I just feel like we're going so deep on all the things, but it was just a simple, is there a project that we aren't aware of that's getting baked in? And the answer seems to be no. But we see rising costs in general, and it got put in these line items because I would agree, there are a lot of line items here that are not necessarily clear. Like, it's not an objection to a 300K increase.
Yeah.
It's not, like, it's just trying to understand, is there a hidden project here that we want to be made aware
No.
of? I think to our other question, I asked it last night, like, what other things do you need on this list that, like, aren't here because the budget couldn't fit them? Like, it's not a, let's cut the facilities budget. It's just seeking to understand
Sure.
what's in here.
Well, I think to Kevin's point, like, we need all of you to understand inflation is real. And it feels embarrassing that I have to say that, because I feel like you all know that. And when you take sustainable cuts year after year after year, and yet on the ground level, we get work orders every hour of every day, and we get things that are breaking all the time, it's not that you're not trying to cut it. It's, although maybe others will, but I'm just trying to contextualize, it's not one big thing, but you're seeing cost increases across the board, like all of us are in every area. And facilities and DPW, the two budgets, and the municipal side, I think even the school budget, those are the two areas that are going to be the most impacted. And so that's why you see some of these costs that are going,
Sure.
that are
And,
going
like,
up.
understand
Yeah.
that some of these rates we can't predict. I think, like, I'm good on the understanding of, like, other contractual services being a little bit of a catch-all, but, like, we had to
It
put
is.
some, like, that's okay. What have we expended against that line item to date this year? Like, did we have that money in other places and we're way over the 286 that was budgeted from last year?
So right now, for other contractual services, that line, we're at 78% expense of that line.
Okay.
And this was ran up April 1st, so that's about 75% through the year.
Oh, so that's on track.
Kind of tracking to
Yeah.
that number. Like, I guess, again, it's like, still kind of like, we cut the budget because we had a deficit. We're now adding back to it, but we didn't fix the structural deficit. Like, we didn't do anything to address the fundamental problem we faced last year, and yet we're adding back into this.
Yep.
So I do think that that becomes a question mark for if there's
Sure.
not a bigger project that we're adding to the list that wasn't there last year. Now
Yeah.
we're adding back dollars without, like, we're surviving. I'm not saying it's great, I'm not saying we're thriving, I'm not saying everything that's broken gets fixed or
Yep.
anything gets fixed.
Right.
But we didn't change our fundamental financial position.
That's right.
So it's a little hard to then swallow, like, we're on budget or nearly on budget for 300K,
Yeah.
but we put 430,
Yeah.
right? I think that's,
That's an absolutely fair point, and that's in the FinCom's purview, and the town council's purview, and the school committee's purview of how they want to address that. Absolutely, 100% agree.
and I totally get that that could mean we run out of money in
Yep.
whatever, April next
April.
year, and you
Yep.
send the same memo, and
Yep.
nobody gets their things fixed, like, I get that, but we didn't get any more income, so that might be the state we live in.
This is an excellent, excellent, excellent discussion and an excellent point, because, you know, obviously Kevin, myself, the staff, you know, the school superintendent, you know, the assistant superintendent, we hear, obviously, on a minute-by-minute basis of the needs, and like you said, like, you know, we have to tell people a lot of times things can't be fixed, right? But that's what I brought up last night, which is, I think, one of the challenges this year for the Finance Committee and all the other boards. You know, we need you to help us set the expectations among the stakeholders and the community that there are going to be building problems that are not going to be fixed. And that's okay. Like, you know, our perspective is, we'd like to have more to be able to fix more of those projects.
Yeah.
And even at the end of the year, if we can take one of the capital items off the list, and we have, you know, say Evan comes into us in Memorial Day and says, well, we're still at 78% of the line item, right? Maybe we can take one of those projects off the tier 2 list and say, well, we have $30,000, let's go do the COIL project, we'll encumber it. But this, I think, is at the heart of the budget conversation, this discussion right now. It's like literally perfect.
I mean, if we're not
Because it's
putting
our
more money in-
frustration, or, you know, it's our perspective and frustration, that we have to tell teachers oftentimes, we can't fix things, we can't fix them quick enough. You know, we have to tell, you know, we took months to fix the stove at the fire department because of supply chain problems, right? Like, there's a whole myriad of impacts. But I think we've never been at a point, or we've rarely been at a point, where the Finance Committee and the other elected boards and other committees, Council on Aging, Library, all of them, are setting those expectations in the public, saying, that's the reality we're living in. And that's okay, that is who we are. And so I think you would
Like, I
agree
think
with me on
that's-
that. This is like the
That's a
heart of the
voting thing
discussion.
for the public, right, of like, do
Yeah.
we want to be that? But until we vote
Right.
differently than we did, when
Right.
your kid comes home from school and says only 80% of the lights in my classroom work.
Correct.
We say, yeah, that makes about good sense, because we only paid about 80% of the budget. So, you know, can you still see your book? I guess that's where we live. Like, that's the
Bingo.
reality of what we've voted as a town. I
Yep.
can't speak for 35,000 voters.
Correct.
They each have their own opinion, but they did speak, and that's what they said they wanted.
Correct.
Okay, like, I get that, you know, makes your job hard because people want stuff that they can't get, but it also gives you a little license to say, I can't give it to you.
Which
I
we
don't have
do
it.
all the time.
Yeah, I don't have it.
But the other point is, and to go one more, peel the onion back one more level, is in my opening executive summary, both in February and this budget narrative, I spoke, the consequence of using free cash is that you're not able to possibly fund some of the capital projects that are on the tier, particularly, let's just say the tier 2 list. Ironically, if you look at the tier 2 list like I brought up last night, there's a handful of facilities projects. So we may be able to fix a few larger, you know, more structural capital needs. But then when the kids come home and say only 80% of the lights worked in my classroom, right?
Yeah.
It's like 6 one, half dozen the other at some point, where you're like, okay, do we fix the coil in the refrigerator? Do we replace the stove at the fire department? Or do we put the lights on in the elementary school? Like, we need all of you to guide us with all of the other, which is the joint budget subcommittee, I think, part of that process is like, where are we going? Do we want to be this community where either lights are off, we can't fix the stove, we can't fix the coil, we can't buy the car,
Right.
or are there other solutions to that stuff?
And
I
that's just
couldn't agree with
becomes
you.
Like, I get that you then have to prioritize safety,
Right.
right? Like, the air conditioning and the heat at the school have to work, but the lights don't all have to work. Nobody, you know, gets sick if the lights aren't all working, right? Like, so,
Totally.
and that just becomes the reality, is like, you do the big projects that are required, and some stuff goes unfixed.
Absolutely.
And we slowly fall into, and we're not letting all your lights go out. But, you know, the lights in this building too, you only get 80% of them, right? But like, then we slowly fall into disrepair because we don't fix those 80%. And then next year you get 80% of 80%, and the year after that, and so on, until you have, you know, bring your own flashlight to school day.
Right.
Yeah, yep.
This is a great conversation, and I think this is like a great discussion on like kind of the heart and soul of where we're at with our financial affairs on these issues. It couldn't be a better example.
We're going to discuss it one more time.
Yeah, just because I started this sorry. But, so just to kind of reiterate, I understand what you're saying. I think it's disheartening for me because this information would have been helpful yesterday, right? So when you come to us with a budget with significant increases and we ask pretty general questions, we were just looking to understand where those increases were. So everything you said tonight was great, Jamie. It created context. I understand, things are variable and fixed costs change. I think it's just a little disheartening that it didn't happen because when you come in with a presentation, whether it's 100,000 or 300,000 or 1.5 million, you have to expect that we're going to ask questions. So I do appreciate it. You did a great job.
Sure.
I would have loved to hear from the department head who develops this and, you know what I mean? So that's, again, I'm assuming, Kevin, you agree with everything he said, but it would be helpful that, we heard from him.
Yeah, Jen, I think to be respectful, I think we're all trying to grow into our positions, and I
Yep.
think we're putting our best feet forward.
Okay.
Kevin's doing a great job. I think he's going to improve in his career. We're not perfect. So
There's
we're
nothing
just
about
glad that the
perfection.
message, we're just glad that the
Yep.
message, was able to get out there tonight and just try to move forward.
Do I sense that that horse has been beaten?
Yes.
Oh,
Not at
no.
all.
Oh.
I had a lot of questions yesterday that I didn't get to ask, and I have to ask, unfortunately, harder and realer questions, more than the theoretical questions. Listen,
My questions
I'm
were
sorry,
real.
but they were theoretical.
Sure, fine.
And now this is the theory of, yes, we have to start having the lights go out, but we don't have the lights go out until we actually start cutting things from these budgets. We Band-Aid this, right, as we have, which is the kicking the can down the road, which is the march toward the fiscal cliff, which is the thing that we say every year. And we don't actually, I've said this to you before, so this won't be a surprise, no one feels the actual pain. Because we find ways to fix it. We find ways to plug holes, things get done.
Yep.
And it makes me look like the bad guy here, but I want to ask real questions about real cuts that are awful. It's awful to say, you just hired a guy, you got to let him go. That is not fun, but, or we're just going to keep doing this same thing every year, where we come in here with our proposed budgets and we patch whatever we can patch, and we keep living in this world, and the rest of the community just thinks it all just continues to work because the lights do stay on, right? So, to that end, that was my preface for just brace yourself. We have, not you personally, your department had, so there's 3 deputy directors of facilities and a facilities administrator, right? Now, on this budget. So what did you have before in the past? Is this less than the number of people you've had to operate this? I've asked this for other departments, and they said, oh, we used to have, 6 auditors, and now we only have 3. So then the 3 doesn't look like so much, because you used to do it with a lot more people.
So there's, actually, and then we have a administrative assistant. So,
Yes, I'm only talking about the 3 deputy directors and the facility administrator.
okay,
So did you have those, is that the same level of staff?
since I've been here, yes,
And you have to remind me how long you've been here?
3 years.
3 years, okay. So for the last 3 years, that's been the same level of people that you've had? Okay. What's the difference between a director of facilities and a facilities administrator? That's just my ignorance.
Karen Tulloch is our facilities administrator. There's not a single bill that comes through that she doesn't see. She helps support the phone system, budgeting, budget narratives as well. Karen helps with a lot of the operation things that go on. She also offsets the time and schedule. She comes in a little bit later because facilities we're 24/7. So she helps support, anything that happens kind of like later on. She's upstairs right now.
What was your staff numbers for your custodians? how many custodian staff, if any, did you reduce down after the consolidation of schools?
So I know from the presentation that was done in January, which would have been after the consolidation, 45 custodians, 28 being full-time, 14 part-time, with subs and summer help as needed. Previous to that, I think there was a retiring and then a consolidation of a custodian in which we didn't lose personnel per se, but like a position was
Just kind of
lost.
got absorbed?
Yes.
Okay. So there was no reduction in staff from going down from the schools?
Correct.
For the number of schools we have, you have the same number of custodians, minus the person that retired?
Well,
There was
no,
three.
but,
Yeah, I was just gonna
There were three that were, there were three custodians through the redistricting that due to retirements and attrition were absolved off, and all of that was documented a couple of years ago. So there were three staff members that they weren't laid off, they weren't
No.
given pink slips, but they, phased out either through,
Yeah.
HR
They just
related
weren't
or whatever, they
refilled.
just weren't rehired.
Okay. And can you help me or all of us understand what the number on the last page, I don't know, it doesn't really have a call out, so I don't know what to call it. It's these numbers here, it's like
Oh,
a
yeah.
small list. It amounts to about $500,000. And
The
it's-
OT maintenance, tradesman, custodian salary, summer help.
It looks like a lot of overtime.
Yep, those are all contractual obligations in labor laws.
So that means, all right, so the contractual obligation, meaning that if they come in after hours, they're salaried, right?
yes.
The full-time custodians
Yeah.
presumably are salaried. So what's the hours at which that then turns over to overtime? I'm not familiar with how you do salary and overtime.
Okay.
Like I have a salary,
So
so whenever I
if
work.
you work
I just
35
work.
hours a week, whatever the contract is, say you work your, I'm just for illustrative purposes. If you do your 40 hours a week and you do your regular shifts, and then you have to do an overtime shift for whatever reason, it could be somebody's out, it could be somebody that's injured on duty and they're out for 6 months, or they're on workers' comp. Our numbers are pretty low on that, but I'm just giving you some examples. There could be an overtime shift if they're cleaning the gyms on a Sunday after games. There could be a special project. I think, sometimes we do a clean out, sometimes there's
Details that.
details. Maybe you can give a few more examples. But stuff like that, if you work over your 40 hours, you're going to get paid overtime to do the work that you need to do.
Okay, so the number is 40 hours.
Is it
And-
40 or is it 35? I mean, I know the non-union are 35, I just
40.
can't remember. Is it 40? All right, it's 40.
Okay.
If you work less,
And-
you still get your full salary?
Yeah, so, yeah, good question.
If you work
So-
less?
So if you work,
Follow-up.
like, if you were 40 hour and you only come in
Yeah.
20 hours, you still get paid your full salary?
Yeah. Well, you take sick time or vacation day, or a personal day, whatever's in the so there's like in the contract, I think they have 3 personal days. Whatever amount of days off they have. I mean, it's a unionized environment. So you have like sick time, personal time, and vacation time. So if somebody's not in for their day and they say have to take their, child to a medical appointment, they take a sick day, but they get paid for that sick day because they're taking a sick day because they have that sick day on the books.
So like the line item, 270,000 for overtime on all school buildings.
Yep.
So that's just a number that you have, are you guessing at that number? Where are we getting that number from? I understand that if someone is asked to work more, they then have to be paid overtime.
Right.
I understand that. But where does this number come from? And secondarily, do we need to be, is there a way to not have people come in off hours?
No.
No.
The schools are filled almost 7 days a week. I think most of their, right?
Oftentimes the trades guys too, they need to do work in a classroom,
Mhm.
which, I mean, the schools make up probably, the majority of the square footage here in Franklin. So
Okay.
if they can't get into the school or to the classroom between 7 a.m. and 3, then they're coming in after hours or Saturdays or.
I mean, I would just also point back to the expense budgets I gave you earlier. I mean, to say where it's coming from on that 10-year sheet, we're spending pretty much the entire personnel expense, the personnel line items, personnel services, we're spending pretty much
Yeah.
almost every dollar of it, right?
I do understand that we spend whatever money we've put in there.
Yeah.
I'm saying if that didn't exist,
Yeah.
and we just can't have the rec center open for pickleball on Monday night
Right.
because we don't have a custodian, then that's something that this community would have to feel.
Right.
So now the pickleball group has to they have to now pay more for their thing, just like the football team has to bring in a ref. You have to now pay for your custodian to come in to do that project.
So, we're working on that, and I don't know if we want to speak to it or not, but, I mean.
Yep.
Anybody?
Hi, everyone. Tina Rogers, Assistant Superintendent for Franklin Schools, and I oversee the facility use and rental and work in collaboration with Kevin and his team. So from the school side of things, we do collect facility rentals. School committee is actually in subcommittee policy talking about updating some language around our use, facility use, but within that schedule, whenever we rent facilities, we do charge for custodial overtime, and then that funding is transferred to the town to pay overtime for custodial usage, custodial time during rentals outside of school hours.
Okay. So we're earmarking it. It's in here for, I'm just going to use the 270.
Sure.
It's in here for the 270, but that will get paid, but it's actually offset by something else? Offset.
Well, it's offset by
You're
the
getting into
rental
the
fees that
accounting.
we take in
Right.
the revenue for it.
Right, but this overtime he's talking about in this particular budget, this is a totally different set of revenue and overtime fees. It's for the details are totally separated. So the details, they'll do details just for, say, basketball games, whatnot, the custodians have to clean up afterwards, and they'll do, different other things that they need to do for getting the school ready. Those funds then, they bill Ryan for the rec department. Okay, Ryan, recreation, you got, so many basketball games. They will pay the school that money, and then that money gets transferred over to pay for the custodians. So that's aside from these other jobs that the custodians and the plumbers are going in after hours, doing, in the tradesmen, doing overtime hours.
Okay. All right. That's it for now.
Do you know what last year's cost was for that, for those lines?
Try to see if Evan can look it
Yeah,
up
we
quick.
can get it.
Yeah, just curious.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's basically what
Budget or expense?
Jamie just said, too.
No, expense.
Expense.
I didn't even see those.
I'm sorry.
No, it's what Jamie said, the 10-year that he put up. It's-
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Just for those, like, accounts for the overtime accounts?
Mm-hmm.
They're on that.
I mean, I will say to Shannon's point, I think this goes back to Ryan's question maybe, or somebody's question last night at the beginning of the session, what's your goal?
Our goal is to not use free cash, that's what we talked about.
Well, that's your goal.
No,
But
we
her
talked
goal,
about
well,
it.
maybe a few of you, but her goal also, I think, and I'm just speaking for one person, but I think she wants people to feel like, kind of, no, I don't think she really wants people to feel pain, right?
Want
But-
it, but
Well, you kind of
Yeah.
alluded to it right now, right? Like, people don't feel the lights off. People
It's not that
don't
we want people to
feel,
feel the pain. It's we want people to acknowledge that they voted for something, and they have to live with the outcome they voted for.
Right.
It's not a FinCom wants to inflict negative
No, you-
pain on others. It's
No.
just, we all live in the town
Yeah.
as we voted for it. We're just shining a light on that reality.
I
It's
got
not we want to twist the screws in certain, like, we don't really care how the screws get twisted. We're leaving that to you all to submit budgets to say, this is how we think we have to twist certain screws because we don't have the right money.
Right.
We are just looking at it and saying, when we see people trying to untwist those screws that you all propose twisting already, that doesn't make a ton of sense. Like, you're adding things back when we didn't get money to do that.
Right.
So we're not proposing where to twist screws, we're just saying we can't untwist.
We need so many shirts.
I know.
Right, and that's what I said about, that's where I was going with the goals, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe at the end of this discussion, the finance committee has to have a series of objectives they're trying to achieve.
Yes.
If making people feel like the buildings are dirtier, if people are making like, no, well, that's what ends up happening when you don't have custodial services to clean buildings, right? It's the same thing you're saying about the pickleball, you know,
I like pickleball.
which isn't the best.
This isn't an anti-pickleball stance.
Well, unless we get rid of the custodians and we can't clean up
But
after
I'll pay the
pickleball, then
extra
Ryan may
fee.
not be able to offer
Right.
pickleball. It's
I
not
would-
the
but I
best
would have to pay
example,
the fee.
but I'm
Yeah.
trying to capture the fact that I think for the rest of the group, for the folks watching at home, this is the robust part of the conversation of
Yeah.
the budget. I couldn't agree with you all more. These are the decisions that all of you have to make about, we've made our proposal. It's time for the finance committee this week to make yours or over the next couple months, and then the council and school committee will make theirs. And it's a question of, do we want dirtier like, Ryan's right, we're coming out trying to not have buildings dirtier, less clean.
Yes.
Not have, we don't want less custodial services. We do want to have more money in the budget to fix more building problems so that the lights are on, et cetera. If the community decides that that's not what they want, we'll obviously take that order and facilitate that directive. But I think this is a really, really good discussion on the lines in the sand of what exactly where we're at in the budget. I couldn't agree with you guys more. I really couldn't.
It's not specific to facilities.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
think you.
No.
We think you're a
It's like,
nice
it's not
person.
personal, it's not against any department, it's just what we all agreed, whatever it was 2 years ago, hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And we all, like, I
This is not our
didn't
first.
agreeing to it,
This
I
is-
was one of 35,000. As everyone up here, like, it's not a how we voted, it's the town collectively jumped into the vote as it now stands.
Right, right. And we suggested that there is money that has been turned back from the town in previous years to help try to turn those screws, to your analogy, to say that we can try to put a Band-Aid on it, and maybe it is a Band-Aid, right? But we all know in FY '28, we're gonna have more wounds, and there are gonna be more issues. But our job, and I thank you for the compliment, Shannon, because one of the things you said at the beginning of this was, the town keeps on doing work to turn the screws to continually make this a great operation. And I think to some degree, that's a really great compliment to our entire organization by saying, you're right. When people say they find the money, right? We all heard that during campaigns. We've heard that for decades. We actually don't find the money. But to the school's credit over the last few years, and what many of you will learn through police and fire and others, we've been doing consistent reforms through every department for years. We find the money through creativity, we find the money through innovation, we find the money through good governance, and we're, again, the market basket of cities and towns. Even if you don't like to shop there, their logo is more for your dollar. You get more for your dollar, you get better quality service here than a lot of other communities. And so in some ways, you're correct. I couldn't agree with you more. Like, that really has been something that we've dealt with for 20 years, because this structural budget deficit and what we're talking about today, you guys are new. He's not. Some of these folks might not be. Tim's certainly no stranger to this in the back. He'll be up next. We've been dealing with this triage of our budget for, I mean, I've been here 11 years, but Jeff was doing it 10 years before that. Lucas, Sarah, Maureen, all of the superintendents and school committees have been faced with these challenges. And we continue to perform at a high level despite putting Band-Aids sometimes and trying to be creative on how to deal with these issues. Because, you know, obviously the voters voted and there's a message out there, but from our perspective, you know, our preference would be to try to bring solvency through this budget through obviously the mechanisms that we have.
So just before Steve, I just want to answer Jen's question, just to get that. In FY '24, $286,058 in FY '25, $260,188.
That's all of those accounts, or that's just the 270?
That's all those accounts.
Oh, okay.
No, that's just the 270.
Oh, I'm sorry, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm tired
It's a
too.
little early for you to try to confuse me.
Oh, no.
So just the 270 line?
Yes, that's
Yes.
just the 270.
I apologize.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Linda had it.
Thanks, Linda. We're making you work this week, sorry.
Mr. Sherlock.
Steve Sherlock, 13 Magnolia Drive, Community Information Director, Franklin Matters, Franklin Public Radio. If I dare to do so, dancing between the thought trains that are out there, you're questioning, and validly, I think, some overtime in the budget, and clearly there's some work that needs to be done off hours. So one way other departments have restructured, it may not be a restructure there, but would it be an option to add potential full-time people who would work in that off hour and not have to pay overtime for regular people to cover extra and still save some money? Would that be an option?
What a good idea. Thank you, Steve. Fantastic. I'll put that on my little notes.
To hire some additional people, full-time, to work the off hours, to do the work.
Mark Minick, yes. Do you want to talk about that?
No, go ahead.
Mark Minichelli, 31 Longfellow Drive. I just wanted to make, I was on the Zoom call last night, so I didn't get to the end of the meeting, but I know, why not? I know, you do. Thank you all.
We finished well before.
But one of my observations last night and tonight is, I'm not sure that everybody in this process is using the same starting assumptions. So Jamie, last night, for example, I heard you say that it would be your preference or your suggestion or maybe your recommendation that we not even discuss an override this year, that give people a
That
year.
wasn't my decision.
I know you said that as well, but I think you also suggested.
I did not say that.
Okay.
But that's okay.
I thought I remember you saying that you think that this community needs a year off before we go into that discussion again. So I guess, what is the assumption that everybody is using to create these budgets? Is it to come in at the same number that they were spent last year? Is it to come in and use free cash to a certain level to accommodate some increases? Is it to assume, even though maybe there was a suggestion not to assume that we need to spend what we need to spend, and then we need to ask the community to potentially override again? I don't feel like everybody's working under the same assumptions between the town submitting some requests, between finance, town council. I would suggest that there should be some shared assumptions in this process from the beginning.
Jamie, if I
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
First, I think, just to be clear, and I think Jamie's expressed this a number of times, it's not that we should stop talking about an override, or not do an override, or not think about an override. It's just that rushing into another override could lead us to the same result. So he said it a number of different ways, but if I understand the message, it's we need to be doing something now, yesterday, in that vein, but voting on it before something has changed won't likely lead to a different outcome. So maybe rushing to a ballot isn't the answer, but an override is a topic the town will continue to have to discuss, and it needs to be discussed probably in this forum and many others. But from an assumptions perspective, I think we started the meeting yesterday trying to lay out some of those of what is the goal. And I can speak for what I had said yesterday, and I think there was some general agreement that using free cash to try to plug a budget like this is just not a sound financial plan. I don't think anybody's posing that it was. I think it was called out as a risk item in the proposal, saying this is a stopgap that really doesn't fix a problem. It band-aids the bleed, right, as we've been kind of saying. So there are certainly efforts, I think, from some of the lines of questions you'll see to, maintain level service to that lowered service that we had, not to the service we had before we had to make cuts. And I think that's where you're seeing a number of folks questioning some of the line items where we're going back up because we didn't get through the process of thinking about, as a town, another override or doing anything in that vein that changed the financial equation. So, but like, I think we do have a shared assumption of we have to look at things that are going up and understand why. If there's some substantive reason that is different or new, new information, something is broken that wasn't broken before in the facilities world, or some new building is open, then that's different than what we voted on in override times. But if nothing has changed, then the budget can't really change. Like, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And Jamie, does that, go ahead and clarify your own.
Pretty darn close. No, I think, just because I want to be really clear, my preference submitting my budget, and I acknowledge the pros and cons. I write it right here. While the use of one-time funds is far from ideal, even though the town, has done this many times in the past 2 decades, I can realistically expect that the town can use $1 to $2 million a year in free cash in a short-term manner, while a sustainable strategy is decided by the town council, school committee, and the community. I am not saying I am prioritizing the use of free cash because I think it is more important right now, especially because we're able to finance the tier 1 priorities for our departments in the capital program. I believe that a sustainable strategy is needed. I hope we've learned as a community the let's just shoot from the hip and try and throw overrides on ballots is not, we're already down 0-2. So and I've acknowledged many times, I don't think a lot of other people do, these were both very close votes. And just because they both lost does not mean at all that there's not an extraordinary amount of support for an override in this community. But Mark, I've said it a million times, and I feel embarrassed that I have to keep saying it. And I'm not going to look at you like I've looked in the past, just looking over in the side and look back at you and say, these discussions are not going to be won in this room. There's no one watching. There's a few people on Zoom. I understand that there are usual people that are here, but we have 33,000 people, and we had 6 people on YouTube last night. And so there's an engagement problem in this community. No one's going to come in and watch these meetings on YouTube for 6 hours, 4 hours, 3 hours, barely even 15 minutes. There needs to be a sustainable strategy. And I think, to Ryan's point, I've been very clear about this. I think it's very advantageous for the town to use as much free cash to avoid any cuts as possible in this budget. If the finance committee and the school committee and the town council feel differently, that's absolutely within their purview. But from my standpoint as a staff member, especially being on the front lines of 2 incredibly toxic and rancorous overrides, my particular preference is for a year or 2 until there's a real sustainable game plan. This is the way that we have to go. If the finance committee also decides, or the council decides they need to make a series of cuts and use less free cash, that's absolutely within their purview, and that's what the final say will be. But from my perspective, when I filed this, I made it clear in February, I made it clear last August, and I made it clear again in my narrative. It's right here in plain English. They need to begin there, and there is a casualty to this. I say it right here. However, this approach will have an impact on the town and school capital program for FY26 and gets us further behind for future investments to town and school fleet, capital, facilities, fields, and infrastructure.
And
I think that's it is what it is.
And I think, I'll speak for myself, I disagree with the strategy. I acknowledge, Jamie, that you're putting best efforts in to keep things nice for everyone. And to your point of there's 10 people online listening, let the lights go out and let them ask why. And then when you have 30,000 people asking why the lights are out in the school, then they'll have to engage. And I think that's maybe the harsh reality, that if we keep shielding the town from the decision that was made, then no one will change their mind. There are other ways, and I acknowledge that. I think we're not letting the pain hit.
I think the pain is hit. And it may not be felt to the level that is going to give people confidence, and maybe I might be a little extra sensitive to it because I'm usually the whipping post for all of the pain, right? So I do feel pain. and I feel civic pain. I feel civility pain. I feel contentiousness in this community, and I think to some degree I feel the pain of the public who has gone through a very rough 6 years, an extraordinary 2 years. I also feel the pain of the school folks who have gone through an incredibly laborious redistricting effort. I've given kudos in my budget to the chair and vice chair and the school committee. I took a lot of crap from a lot of people 3 years ago when I held them accountable in public. And I've given them all the credit in the world for all the crap that I've gotten from a lot of people. I give them all the credit. They did everything I asked them to do. And I believe they, as well as everyone else in this community, deserves to feel a little bit of relief. Not just me, but I feel like given what all of our department heads and staff and our community has been through the last couple of years in this discussion, this isn't just about making things still nice or putting the lights on or making the buildings clean and the custodial thing. That's not what this proposal is actually about. My proposal in using free cash is actually about community civility. It is not necessarily just about the 80% of the lights on in the classroom or a few details of custodians. It's about trying to get to a point where how do we heal from these divides? And how do we try to come together and try to have some compromise and some consensus on what are the goals? What are the objectives? Where do we want to be? In my personal opinion, and I'm just one person, showing people more drudgery through dirty buildings and feeling the pain more, I don't think is going to be advantageous to our families and our kids in our school district. I just don't. Laying off SROs, which is the next choice you're going to get, okay, is not going to be popular. We saw what happened when the ambulance went away last summer. People really were upset. Look at what happened when the LPN was laid off last year. People were really angry. Maybe I'm just one person who's felt a lot of that anxiety and pain and been kind of the piñata for it, but my proposal with using free cash, sacrificing tier 2 and tier 3, when I look at tier 2 and tier 3 in the capital program, even the superintendent acknowledged it with some of his proposals. He came out and said, yes, some of this stuff can wait, but what can't wait, or what's to me more divisive, is going through another decision-making process where we're going to divide the community more on what is the next cut.
Okay.
So that's just, maybe
As we're having this discussion, isn't it also consistent, whatever you call it, the schools are using the revolving fund? That's also a subsidy, as I understand it. Essentially, you're making a subsidy to make the school budget work. Am I correct in stating that? So we really don't have a $2 million problem. We have a $5 million problem. So if we're going to go down that track, we got to do a $5 million cut throughout the budget, as I would do my math. Am I correct in stating that?
I think you should ask that when they come up here in a few minutes and talk to them about revolving funds when they do their budget
Right, but again, it
presentation.
looked to me like it's a subsidy within their budget.
Well, that's, you can talk to, you can address that.
But I think we have to address it as a whole.
Well, we do. And I think.
Because it's still the same thing.
Well.
I feel like, I appreciate your insight. I feel like you are talking for yourself. I know that that doesn't represent what I'm thinking in this. I think going through the scrutiny of saying, what do we feel like could be excess and could potentially be cut, and then assessed at the end as a team in terms of what do we think is the best thing, is the best approach versus just, I guess, taking a personal stance now. So I think if we just know that we're coming at it from that lens, right? Like, let's scrutinize it. You have been doing the list, I think, which is great. And if we assess that at the end and we say, here is what the finance committee thinks potentially, and then probably vote on what we think, that whether or not we put that forward. But I think that would be the best approach. And then what will really happen out of that, because I think that part is very important, is that the people will see of kind of this is, what they really need to see is they need to see that the Band-Aid that's being put on, because without all this discussion, it's just, they're like, oh, it's balanced, great. So I think all of this discussion is important.
Super well said, and certainly the list that I've been taking exceeds the goal that I had stated personally beforehand, which was just to get to not needing the free cash in excess of the amount, like, I think we said 1 million, right? So I think the list at the moment I have is up to 1.7. So I wouldn't propose taking out all 1.7. I think we would prioritize the list and figure out if I feel like it's 1 million and you feel like it's 500K and someone else feels like it's 250. Where is our midpoint? What from the list gets us to that midpoint and we can live with not adding in, maybe not even cutting, just not adding back in, or we prioritize differently. I think we gotta look at the list. But then coming to what do we think the best recommendation is, I don't think we're trying to solve a $5 million problem now by cutting more. I think that's a great goal, but I think hard to do. I think like that would require more cuts to the points that have been made. But I'm exactly with you, of like, let's make a list and then review a list. I'm not saying I'm not implying we're gonna do all the things on the list. We may not even propose any of them. We might say, you know what, none of these make sense.
Well, let's have
Stick
that
with the
list. Let's
free
review it.
cash,
Yeah.
right? Like, these are the things we considered,
Yeah.
and we all chose not to do them.
Okay, I'll ask again, is the horse dead?
Sure.
Yes.
Plow through and horse dead.
Thank you.
That's where we're at.
We're good. Technology, I think, quickly.
Oh, technology?
Well, we passed over them last night because Tim was coming in tonight, so.
Passed over.
You got passed over last night?
It'll be 5 minutes.
This is simple, I need more routers.
Routers?
I need 1,500 laptops. We'll be good.
Tim Rose, the Director of Technology. I'm here for any questions you may have. If you recall, I did a pretty extensive presentation back in December. So we can expand on that, or if you look back at that and have any lingering questions from that, that would be fine as well.
Questions, people?
I don't have any.
Tim, I would just say thank you. I think your write-up was good. I understand the, whatever it was, 460K of recurring this year. We need to do technology replacements. I don't like questions where there are no options, so I'd rather put them in structurally, but I think you laid out the case for that very well. I understand it. Thank you.
No?
No.
I don't know.
I do. Help me, as I was going through the school budget, they also have an IT department.
Yes.
Okay, so how do you guys relate to one another?
It's actually IT department. They're two different budgets, it's one IT department. So I've been the Director of Technology for like 20 years, and we've always been a merged department. We oversee both town and school. We, can find some, benefits of merging that way.
I agree.
Have two different tech directors, you save a lot of money that way. We were one of the first communities in Massachusetts to do that, actually. So when you see two different departments, there is a budget for all of the stuff on the school side, a budget for all of the stuff on the town side. Some of those have some overlap, and the salaries for all of the technology department personnel is within the school budget. That decision was made even before I got here, about 22 years ago, when they merged both the facilities department, town and school, and the technology department, town and school. So that's the history.
So on those shared software platforms that they have, do you allocate the expenses?
Yes, and mostly on software has to stay pretty separate, only because of educational discounts. The schools get considerable educational discounts, and I cannot use those on the municipal side. But the shared services typically are, like, for example, the Wi-Fi licensing that we just got approved in Capital a couple of months ago. That was roughly 600 access points. Those are spread across town and schools. There's no educational discount there, but there is a quantities of scale discount. So grouping them all into one big lump and buying 600 licenses to renew them for the next couple of years gives me a bigger discount. So there's your quantities of scale discount.
Yeah, but do we spread it amongst where they belong?
Oh yeah, they're already here.
No, I mean the cost.
It's a capital cost, so that capital cost comes out of capital. So it's not in regular budget, but the things that are school only and town only are in those separate budget that are in the recurring budgets.
I That was the shortest in 2 days. So there we go. Here we go.
Do I get a prize?
Maybe
I told you,
it's a
5
trend.
minutes.
Maybe it's a trend.
Well, we made him show up like 3 times to meetings, didn't we? Before, like, this is payback.
That's good.
From memory now.
Lucas, it would be nice to keep the trend going.
I only control what I
Take
control.
that, 5 minutes.
I dreamt about you last night.
Oh.
And it wasn't good. I said, oh, no.
That's too bad, I didn't know where that was going. All right, so, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us. We're here to answer any questions directly, provide any information we can regarding our budget. I know that you received the narrative and some of the other documents. We've also conducted our own budget presentations throughout the school committee process that we have in order to get to this place where we had a recommendation that went to the town administrator after it was recommended to the school committee. So I'll let the folks introduce themselves on the side of me. So,
Good evening, everyone. I'm Joanna Melotti, the school business administrator.
And I'm Paul Griffith, I'm a chair of the school committee.
I have one question to start. How's that? The way I see it, we have 400 teachers, plus or minus?
Yep.
398.4 or something. And then we have, what, 1,100, around 1,100 employees.
yeah.
Could you give me some just snapshot of what the other 600 people are?
So there's about 700 total full-time equivalents of people who are in schools, such as teachers, support personnel, your special education department, your speech and language, all the types of roles, nurses, tutors, instructional support staff, and the other positions that you're thinking of, they're employees listed, but that could include coaches, monitors, food service cafeteria workers, van drivers. So there's a group of people that work that are on Lifelong Learning, which has the Lifelong Learning program. They also are under our umbrella for who you would consider an employee. So, and they all have different roles, different hours. Coaches are a flat stipend, so it's not necessarily like an employee that would be hourly or whatnot.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen?
I'm wondering if you could, so you know how we did the departments and we went through each department? Is it possible just to skim through each section? And then if people have questions about that section? George, is that something that we can do?
I don't care, frankly, how it's done, but if you, whatever's comfortable, so that we can get what data we need. What, can you define?
Well, I have the proposed budget, this one.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if it makes sense to go through
The one that
each.
starts with school
account?
committee, total, blah,
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah.
So I would wonder, so we did have an exercise with that for school committee. So if there's specific line items, I think we can be really helpful and target those. But if there's significant discussion on every single line item or going like that, we have a like 2 or 3 hour recorded section.
Nope, that's not what I'm
going over all that.
asking. So I'm good with the 2 to 3 hours, I can tell you that much. But what I think is if you just go by section and if there's any questions on that section, because if you're gonna go randomly, I feel like we're
Yeah.
gonna be jumping everywhere.
Yeah.
That's fine.
You know what I mean?
I do. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
Just procedurally, and this is different than we've done it. I'm
Okay.
open, and the reason I'm saying that is because we put a lot of time up front with our school committee to go through line by line, put the budget book out, go line by line.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the bottom line from account 300 is there. That said, I'm also balancing wanting to be as transparent as possible as we've committed to being, so I want to work with you on that.
Yeah.
And I guess what I would ask is just if we go through, I don't know how, just go by sections of,
Well, I don't know, how have you usually done it?
so we did this January 27th, where we went kind of down the line and just went through like departments. and
Oh, to
then-
the finance committee though?
No, to the school committee.
Oh, to the school committee,
Because finance
okay.
approves our bottom line budget, that was
Right.
why.
Okay.
But,
So
if you want to,
this list, right? Start right at the
Yep.
school committee, and we'll go line by line within the school committee, and
I mean, we don't have to,
my guess
but-
is it
I
will
mean-
expand, but that's the outline to use. Correct? I guess you.
I just want to
Yeah,
be, just want to be clear about and I'm trying not to start off, hey, how are you? Nice to see you all. And now I'm getting all guarded. I'm just thinking about just the bigger idea of when we do a line by line. I guess fiscally, I report to the school committee who goes through the line by line, and they provided that.
Yeah.
In detail. So I will answer any question in detail. I just don't want to set an expectation that the budget that we put together, it's like one of the departments within the whole town budget, it's 300. Obviously, you have recommendations that you would make, and the town council has ultimate say in how much we get in line 300, but I'm just trying to balance the idea there. So I don't know of another community that does it that way either, but I'm also open to
All right, then we can
what
just take it
sections do you want
randomly.
to just go.
I mean,
Maybe at least page.
Are there certain sections that?
I'm just trying to
Just
figure
go-
out a way to structure it.
You'd
You
already-
say, what questions do you have?
Yeah.
We're gonna be everywhere, all over the
Right.
place.
Just
do
go
it.
straight up,
Yeah.
I did this
Sounds
line by
good.
line, just go this line by line, you'd already be just start. Seriously.
Yeah.
Just
With
go
the
line by line
understanding-
and start at the school committee
So
and go
just-
through
Yeah,
it.
to start it off, any questions on school committee?
Yeah, right. I think that's. the
Any
easiest
questions on
way.
superintendent's office? Great.
Isn't
Assistant
there
superintendents?
FTE request in the superintendent's office?
Yeah.
No.
I thought I saw a new position.
No.
No, we
there
don't
isn't
have a
one.
new.
No.
Just, I can speak positions, and then we can keep doing however you want to do it. This year, we came in and made some decisions around, after we reorganized, around staffing, and said, okay, what do we need? What is serving us? What are areas in where we could use some support and improvement? So within our budget, we had a net FTE, meaning we didn't add any above what we have this year in the system, but what we had to do was make some difficult choices around some of the positions we had, and then what we did is, when we arrived to this table, was we've already notified 7 people that are not with us, but what we've done is we knew we needed to prioritize what positions we did need and what we learned, and those included some behavioral support, and then support for our in-district programming, some of the what's my other? I got it right here. The technology position, we've restored a technology position, and a specialized program teacher as well. So those are just some of the things we said, these are things we need for next year. So what we did is we looked at our budget, we looked at where we could basically eliminate some FTEs to turn those into other FTEs, and that's one of the things that we did this year to try to come in. Where we did, I think that's why you'll see this year, it was 2.5%. That was a target. We had removed healthcare from our line, where typically we were combined and it had a larger percentage increase. So in the spirit of trying to come in and do the work, and I think someone used the word twist the screws earlier, we tried to do some of that work beforehand, because we really are working, like all of our departments, on trying to really work to be as fiscally responsible as possible as we enter this particular budget season. So that's just a general idea, but I think it came up around, was there an addition to my department? There wasn't, and any additions or changes, they were all made within the scope of who we have.
Keep the screws where they are.
I just have a question
No right, no
on the
left,
first
yes.
page before we go. This,
Okay.
this overall page, the first one that,
Yeah.
yeah. Did I do the math correctly, that this is essentially just overall, it's about $2 million more than last year?
It's about
If you take out,
1.7.
because you have to take out the,
Healthcare.
so if you go back into 26 and take the healthcare out as if it was never there in the first place,
It's
then there's a
about
$2 million difference.
1.7.
Okay. Okay. About two. Okay, that was my only question, thank you. Not my only question.
No, I understand.
On the first page.
My only question on the first one.
What percentage is that contracted obligations of the 1.7?
What percentage, sorry, Jen, say it again?
Or the amount of the 1.7, sorry, Steve, I'm trying. The 1.7, how much of that is contract obligations for like salaries, like?
Salary is 1.88.
1.88.
Salaries.
Is 1.8?
Yep.
1.88.
Could I suggest that maybe put up some of the relevant pages as you go through?
You need help, Valerie?
It's just on one of the other Chrome.
It's in the Franklin
I think we
Public
end up just
Schools
skipping the
website.
first
I could
page.
just-
So first page,
Do you want to
questions.
pull up our-
Okay, we'll do it by page.
Maybe that page.
Yeah.
Like
Spend 3 minutes to
Are we
scan.
doing the presentation or?
Yeah, I can continue going down little chunks too.
I just don't want you to feel like you're rushing through them or going back to them because we went, like, maybe we just do a page, but we sit there for a second.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's fine on mine, if that's George.
Yeah,
I
whatever.
don't know.
I would like to ask about the legal settlements, not that I just want to understand it better. The last one, page 1. Thank you. Could anyone, I just would like to further understand the last thing on the first page, the legal settlements. It looks like we're reorganizing. How did that work last year versus now? Yeah, this is.
Legal settlements.
It says it was like previously in tuition, but what are those? Like what, sorry, just a lack of understanding.
So, and I'll let, Mrs. Marno can chime in, but I'll start. Basically, where we did a consolidation on looking at if there's any type of legal settlement. Sometimes it does involve like a tuition for some, I'm trying to be as sensitive here, but the idea is that it could be related to either settlement or legal tuitions that need to be paid, but putting it all into one account where it would fall because it's part of a settlement. Is that correct?
Yes, so sometimes if there is a disagreement between the district and parents regarding a placement per se, we go through the BSEA process, we go through different processes through DESE to come to a resolution. We are encouraged to go through a resolution if we, prior to going to hearing, and one of those resolutions is a settlement agreement where we'll agree to pay a tuition at a school that maybe the district didn't agree with, but the parents wanted to become collaborative and in the best interest of the student to come to a resolution.
And if I may, so these costs were previously budgeted out of the tuition line in the special education budget. And throughout the year, once the settlements came in, we would just move those funds to this line, the 1435. So this year, we just decided just to budget out of there, knowing that we will have settlements.
So someone's at the school, doesn't like something, basically presses the issue, then we'll offer, you can go to a different school and we'll pay the tuition for the different school as the settlement? Is that generally what we're saying?
Or if we, as a district, say we
Right, Jen?
educate a student, if we say we have the ability to
Super high
educate a
level.
student.
Nice
Super
way to say
high
it.
level
And
without
sure.
breaking confidentiality, yes.
Yes, got it, right, like.
But if we say we can
complaints is
educate
your
a
way to
kid,
Yeah,
and they say you're not meeting the student's needs based on what.
Right,
we
it's in the
feel,
best
then
interest
it's
of the
like, well, we
student to
think
come
we
to a
are.
resolution.
Sure.
And the judge says.
Sorry.
Got it,
Sorry.
okay, thank you, I'm good.
Can I ask about that? Is that impacting your circuit breaker? By moving it out of tuition?
No, because you can submit the settlement agreement for circuit breaker reimbursement if it's an approved school.
But if it's not coming out of the tuition lines, legal, you know what I mean? You have it out of your legal account.
It is considered a tuition anyways. It just, for DESE purposes, it needs to be in a 1435 line. But it gets reported, we get reimbursed through a circuit breaker.
Okay, thanks.
The secretarial line on 1410, that was a 23% increase instead of a 2.5 kind of COLA raise, I think that people are used to seeing.
This is my 1410.
1410, and then I guess it would be subline 20, I don't know how you.
So yes, so we had a secretary in my department, in the business finance department, and she was under the union contract. That secretary retired, and we decided to consolidate. We previously had an accounting coordinator and that secretary in my department. Both of them retired, and I never filled the accounting coordinator position. So we combined those positions into one, which increased the salary a little bit.
Is that where did that come out of? Where's the negative line?
The unionized secretaries' accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So this now is someone who's not in the union, so they,
Yeah.
that position that was merged from 2 positions to 1, moved into a non-union. It's in the business finance department salaries now. So it would come out of
Where is unionized secretaries? What line is that? Sorry, that's what you're asking.
No.
Where did it come from?
No, the one that.
So if you look at the line below the contracted services, you see a negative of 25, so I cut there to make that position salary work.
So the contracted services.
So I cut, yeah, I cut the contractor services expenses by 20-something thousand dollars to make
And
up
then
for
the-
that
right.
position, yeah.
Thank you, that makes sense. We have another question. The human resources, I may have misunderstood her, and I don't, and she doesn't seem to be here, so I may have misunderstood her yesterday.
Karen Brad is
But
our HR director for school, for town.
Yes. I thought that I had asked her if her department was the HR for everyone, and I thought she said yes.
I tried to interject and clarify
Okay.
that Karen Brad is our director of human resources for the town, and the school also has a human resources department.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
I was trying to.
I just didn't catch your interjection.
No, nobody
Okay.
did.
Yeah, right, okay. That at least makes sense.
Yep.
I have a question about line item 1230, contracted services. It was moved from the superintendent's office to the assistant superintendent's office, and the amount was effectively doubled. Why is that?
You're talking about the 1230. The assistant superintendent is 1220. So 1230 is a different line. It's the district administration.
Correct.
Is that the one?
Yeah, so the superintendent's budget used to have those costs in his budget. So I removed them from his budget because they are district costs, not superintendent's costs. Is the PR?
GGPR, our Iron Mountain storage, and Precision, you can see in the column, Zoom,
Yeah.
the Zoom fee that we pay for our meetings, and then the Precision Weather, which we use for the forecasting on the snow days and whatnot.
So it was 20,000 last year, and now it's 40,000?
No, so those, they were split among line 60 other expenses and line 40 contracted services under the superintendent's department, and then we moved it to the 1230. We combined them because they are all contracted services. We signed contract to have those services performed.
We ready to move to page 2 of this?
You guys good to move to page 2?
Say it again?
Good to move to page 2?
Yes, sorry. I'm on page 5, I don't know.
She wanted to go in order.
I like to see decreases. District-wide data processing. Tim have anything to do with it?
Let's see.
Went down.
Yes, so that's.
190 grand,
Yeah.
200 grand.
That's mostly for the technology department. We moved some of these expenses, and he also had a capital request that was approved, so that's why the money came out. He also was able to get a grant for some of the software, and that decreased that as well.
How are we able to decrease $40,000 in postage and shredding?
That's good. I like this question.
Okay, so we have been working with Iron Mountain, our storage vendor, and it is very expensive to store files outside. So what our department has been doing, We have been going department through department. Each fiscal year, we pick a couple departments and we go over it, and we see what really needs to be still kept and what can be shredded. So those savings are realized in this year's budget. Postage, we have enough postage to last through FY '27, so we do not need any postage for FY '27, any funding.
My kids go to my mom's house to shred documents from her business. She's keeping them for 7 years, and she has a big filing
Yes,
cabinet.
yeah.
They get paid $1 an hour, I think.
That's a
Can
better
have the
rate.
kids shred
That's a
at
pretty
recess.
good deal.
My kids will shred at recess, so he needs shredders. I know how. Have an established rate, so it's probably pretty
Yeah.
good.
It's not unionized.
I might take
So
you
I
up
just
on that
want
offer.
to also let you know, the town is also, our Lisa Cook, our AP specialist, has been doing this for a few years now and has really saved a lot of money with Iron Mountain.
I thought you were going to say bringing documents for the kids to shred.
I could, I mean, we use seniors, so we'll start bringing in
Senior
kids.
center, get the
Might
senior
get in
center
trouble with
shredding.
the HR director, but.
Yeah, we could get a whole bunch of shredders. No, that's awesome. That's great. That's like a very, a lot of human ingenuity going into solving a high-price problem. So good work.
Page
Two.
two.
I know, but I don't have any questions.
Do you know what this page is? Give this-
What is the Lexington plan? In like,
I need the account.
Yeah.
High level. Words
Yeah,
of Latin,
yeah,
I got it,
yeah,
yeah.
High level.
Lexington plan is our former longevity plan. It's going away next year.
Next year.
Yeah, FY '27. So we have to budget for that. So teachers that have been here in the district for, I believe, over 20 years.
20 years.
They get a small longevity payment that's spread throughout their 26 pay cycles.
awesome. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? The department head team chair, is that salary and stipend? Or is that,
Salary and stipend, yeah.
it's both?
Yeah.
So their salary is not in that line?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's both.
This is really an ignorant question, but is that an additional person in addition to a teacher, as a department head?
So a department head teaches and leads a department. They just have a reduced schedule. So at the high school, they would teach 3 classes, and they would have 3 classes off, I think 3 or 4, depends on the situation, on the periods, and then they get a stipend to lead the department and do the department head meetings and help hire over the screening and do all the hiring that we need to do in the spring and the fall. So the department head itself is actually someone who's teaching a course load, but it's reduced from a full-time course load so they can do the department responsibilities for the subject areas.
So if I was a department head,
Yes.
I would be teaching whatever I'm teaching.
AP Euro, US2.
And I have my salary for being a teacher.
Yep.
And then I also have a salary for being a department head?
You would get, it would be, your salary would be a full-time position, but we schedule you for 3 classes, right? So you'd have 3 classes you're teaching, and then you'd have a salary of a teacher's salary, like how, a full salary. But then instead of teaching the whole time, the periods that you have off, you're doing department-level things, meeting with families, doing, department prep and whatnot.
Right, so I'm just trying to figure out where my salary is, my regular teacher salary is, probably on a different line item. But then
No, they
there's
put it here.
also $2 million, or is that?
Those are
That's
the
the
people.
Total person.
salary
Total.
and the
Okay,
stipend.
so
yes.
there's 16
And a half.
and a half of those people, half of a person, 16 of those people, and the teachers listed in the rest, these aren't duplicative, is what I'm asking.
They're
they're
not,
not.
they're listed there as a teacher. Their teacher is there,
Got
like
it.
their teaching part is
Okay.
included.
That, yes, thank you.
Yep. That's a good question.
The, on line 2310, it says, so I might be reading this wrong, but it says we went down 3 total teachers. I understand we went down but then added 1. So you went down 3 total teachers, but the budget still went up 3%.
Yeah, contractual obligations. And we have a 2.5% contractual increase plus step, so step adds up.
So it could be up to like 7%. Well, it goes this way. No, it goes both ways.
Look at Laney advancement.
So even though we lost 3 salaries, the increase, so you lost 3 total salaries.
3 FTEs, yes,
Yep.
3 positions
And then
netted.
the contractual obligations ate up all 3 of those salaries, plus?
Yeah.
Crossover question, this page and the next, it's in the first line on the next page. I see both of those.
Are we going to page 3?
It's like, it's the bottom line on page 2 and the top line on page 3. Like, I see both of those are going
Therapeutic
up
services.
significantly. Could you guys add some color to that?
Sure.
Yep. Therapeutic services, is that the one?
It's,
Same as what,
yeah,
contract
therapeutic
services?
services, there's salaries and contracted services. It doesn't look like we added any positions, but the cost across those 2 is going up
Yes.
just shy of $1 million.
Yes, so under this line is our contracted services. So if some of our students with disabilities require therapeutic services that we don't have as our own staff, such as orientation mobility specialists. The big one has been, oh my gosh, I can't think, TBIs, and I can't think of what it stands for all of a sudden, I'm doing blank.
Teacher
of the visually
Thank you, oh my gosh,
TVI.
sorry, brain
What?
fun. Teacher of the visually impaired.
Okay.
So teacher of the visually impaired,
Okay.
O&M specialist with our orientation mobility specialists. So those, we don't have, well, at one point, we didn't have enough students to actually hire a full-time staff member for that. So we contract out to other agencies to provide those services for our students. So that's one piece of that. Also, we have our NEC partner program in the district, which if you've listened to my presentations in the past, you understand that this is a fantastic program where it's a specialized program within the district. We partner with NEC, the New England Center for Children in Southborough, and we provide this program for our students with significant autism. If we did not have this program in our district, these are students that would be going out of district at a much higher cost. This is one of our cost savings. So the contract obligation for that service is part of this, and of course, they have their annual increase and why this costs more as well. So those are some of the contracted services and why they go up. We also have students who require one-to-ones, which is a one-to-one aid with them in our out-of-district programs, and if that's the case, sometimes those services come out of that line as well.
So for the TVIs and these one-to-one services.
Yep.
Those, as you describe them, sound like they are full-time or near full-time positions.
Right, but for example, the one-to-ones at the out-of-district programs, so those are the out-of-district program staff members, so they just add that additional cost onto the tuition for those students. So we don't hire our own person to provide those services. However, TBI, I agree with you, which is why we have it in our budget this year. We are crossing our fingers that we will find one. They are needles in the haystack. There's not many out there, but we've tried posting 3 years ago, and we were unable to secure a person with that degree and expertise, but we're going to try again this year for that reason, as you just brought up, that it will be cheap, more cost-effective for us to have our own staff member provide those services than contract out.
So just from a pure math budgeting perspective, you're looking for that, but I don't see an increase in the FTEs. Is it still just listed as a contracting service, but we're trying to do that?
No, not for,
outside of this?
no, it's not in this line because I believe, Jonna, right, we add it into our budget increases for next year for an additional staff member, so, but, sorry, TBI was an example of one of those added costs that we have.
Sure, but yeah, I guess I
therapeutic
just
services.
it's making kind of
It's
the
under.
same question that was just asked before. Even removing
It's-
that contracted service.
Yes.
into a salaried position, we're still seeing like nearly $1 million increase,
Yeah.
like a.
Yes, yep.
Yes, that's one of
These
the
are also
main,
specialized positions.
These are, again, one
that
of
are
those
challenging.
special ed costs that are very hard to control. Many more of our students are requiring those one-to-one aides in the out-of-district programs, and we are
And do we pay a
responsible.
rate there that is commiserate to what you would pay if that was happening in our district, or are they charging us some exorbitant
Way higher.
contracting fee?
Yeah.
Is there not an allowance to send our own person? Like, is it not permitted to send your own person with them?
Not typically, no.
not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question. I think we can.
Yeah, we can
confirm
explore
that,
it,
But I
for
know when you
sure.
contract for them to provide a service, typically, in my experience,
With their
typically they
staff.
provide, if it's contracted out, they want to provide the personnel that would.
'Cause they
deliver the
manage that
service
person.
And charge
Sure.
you. But I think it's worthy of a follow-up, just so you can be
And do
clear.
we do that in the reverse? Like, do we have anyone coming into our school where we're offering that same service to someone, like, to another district?
Interesting question. It's actually something that through the reorganization, Mrs. Morano and I have talked about, as we build out our in-district programming, we're not looking to turn into a private, because we have a priority to kids in Franklin. But if there were circumstances where we were able to stabilize and have the personnel we need, which right now we have really put together a budget that staffs at really what we need. I don't know where I could cut that it wouldn't have a major impact on the program we built over the last 2 years with the whole reorganization and the reductions. One thing that we have talked about are there, say, the neighboring town, Medway, that has a student that could go to a collaborative program, an out-of-district program, but we have a cohort that matches the needs of that particular student. Could they tuition in and do that? We have considered that, we just haven't been in the position to explore that too much further until we know we've shored up the ship, and we have to answer to the families that live in Franklin as a first step. So that's just conversations that we've had around how we could grow the programs, and I think that was one of the things that we thought of when we consolidated schools and started to look at specialized programs, having them in our schools, and looking at cohorts of kids. How could we do that? So
Does having that TBI specialist, if we are able to find them, increase our ability to do that? Because now we offer potentially a service that other schools.
Yeah, that is one of, depending on how, if the person can fit in their schedules, I would absolutely contract to the area districts, because we all are looking for TVIs, as Jen knows.
I do think, I was watching last night, and two things are coming to my head on this. One, the concept of creating a position in-house that could cut down on the costs. I think that was like the sentiment I heard. And then the second comment I had, I was thinking about something that Jamie mentioned around, if you hire someone, but then you sub them out to other districts, you run the risk that they then go, ooh, I should just be TBI for, the King Philip, Medway, Millis. So it's just something we have to, it's just a thought I was thinking about, and I was applying it to this type of position but it doesn't mean that it couldn't happen to try to help if it made sense, so.
I guess I was thinking more if we have a TBI person that then opens a door to whatever, a Medway, Bellingham student who needs that service, instead of sending our TBI there, have them come here, now we also hire a one-to-one, contract that out at the rate that everybody else is charging us. Now we're making back on the one-to-one at a higher rate than our teacher salary, or that we're paying even that person. And we could do it because we have this, like, the TBI maybe opens a door to thinking about that in some
Really,
specialized.
These are all things we could explore, for sure.
Yeah, okay.
That's one of the reasons we included it, was for these types of conversations.
Cool,
In
thank
a
you.
stable, obviously having your.
I mean, that cost just
ship
looks
straight.
kind of uncontrolled.
Can I ask one more question about circuit breaker? So when you get your circuit breaker money, do you then apply it to these different items so you just talked about your one-to-one out-of-district services in that therapeutic line. Do you then use your circuit breaker money to pay down that therapeutic line, or are you just using it for your out-of-district tuitions, transportation?
Just the other.
I'm just trying to understand how.
We generally use it for just to cover tuitions, and it doesn't cover tuition, all of it. So all the money that we get for circuit breaker gets applied to tuition. And
So it doesn't go back to the funds that you're allocating the expenses to?
no, but it wouldn't make a difference. We could allocate it there, but it would be short on tuition by $100-something thousand.
Okay. And then, do you know what your circuit breaker amount was? Is that in here? I didn't see it. Just curious. If you don't know it, it's not a big deal. I can look it up, but,
For this year, it's 4.7 million, FY '27.
okay. FY '26?
FY '26 this year.
Applied for
is-
27, yeah.
So, yeah, that's 4.7.
Okay. And then what do you-
we have for this year,
Yeah.
right now, which is FY '25, it's close to 4.1 million.
And that's historically where it's been, about in the
Yeah.
4? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The secretary at 23, line 2340 is the raises, looks like it's double COLA, so I'm just,
Say the line again.
sorry, 2340, librarian.
Oh, yeah, so that's the librarian, so that's one person's salary. So with the salary grid, you move up a step, and you go up 2.5%, and you move a step. So if we say someone, it's a step 9, next year, they're gonna have 2.5% of their salary, plus they're going to advance to step 10.
Okay.
So that's the increase.
So COLA doesn't really apply to teachers?
It does on top of that.
Yeah,
You have to deal with both. There's steps, there's also lanes,
Lanes, yeah.
and COLA.
yeah.
So if they earn a degree,
Oh.
they'll move, and then also you have the COLA, which is their contractual.
Got it, okay.
Right, and then they also, their steps and years of service count towards their.
The simpler way to think of that is when you're at the very top and you have no more steps to go, then it is only COLA.
Only 2.5%, yeah.
Where is our average for that relative to other districts?
The COLA?
Knowing
Oh.
where our teachers are in the step progression.
Every district has different setups depending on their union contracts. So the overall structure of steps, lanes, COLA, all that can vary from contract to contract. So
I
it's
think
not
he's-
necessarily.
I think he's asking where our staff is falling. Like, are they in the beginning, 1 to 5, or are they, you know what I mean?
Because of the 2 failed overrides and the district reorganization,
Yeah.
we've reduced 65 staff members over the last 2 years.
And those are your young.
And then those are always the newest people.
Right.
So when you think of it from a seniority standpoint, right, the people who are newest into your organization are the ones you end up reducing. So what I would be curious, I haven't done this analysis, but I would be curious to know where we fall, like, are we more veteran because of that fact, where we don't have, but then there are times where people, specific roles, you hire someone who's, step 1 because they came into a specific role that they're licensed for, so it's not like a blanket statement, but.
So what's a lane? I mean, I get a step.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
bachelor's.
Lane is a degree.
Master's, doctorate. Those are different lanes, and then their steps have different values associated with them.
Thank you.
So Lucas, would you then anticipate if, this is a big
Yeah.
if your staffing were to stay relatively constant in terms of the roles you had,
Yeah.
but you saw the natural teacher turnover for retirements and whatnot, that our average step would move downward?
Would move, yes, because what I would say is, our strategy has never been, and it wouldn't be, to hire at a top step. We would look to say, can we hire someone who we can train, who's maybe newer to the field, but that we could, I think that's just just fiscal stewardship. There are certain positions, like if a TVI, for example, or there's like a physics teacher, if there's something where you need someone who's licensed and can do that job, I think we would look differently, but we always try to look at, when we screen, you try to look at where people's years of service, what are the experiences they bring. It's not always step 1, but like, you look at someone in their first 3-4 years and you try to do that. So it's not a cookie cutter, but I do think we do, and we try to be as, and that's where the department heads help too, with screening applicants and looking at the resumes and years of service, and our admin team, obviously, so, yeah.
So, yeah,
We would try to recruit on a,
If it would be possible, I would be
Yeah.
interested to see, like, over the last, I don't know, 5 or so years, what was our, like, average step? Like, if you took everyone and said that, one person was at 10, 100 people were at 9, 300 people were at 8, and so on, and just like weighted averaged it?
Yeah.
Are we at, 3.1 and we stayed right there? Are we at 6 point, and like where, like what is our trajectory
We
on
can
that?
get, I've said that a couple times, and I'll have to rewatch this because I forgot what else I've committed to, but we can get that information to you.
That'd be great.
We're happy to do that.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah, so I guess, first off, thank you for answering all our line item questions.
Sure.
Really appreciate it. Kind of questioning the wisdom of me asking about 2330, since it is a year-over-year decrease. Just trying to get my head around kind of the math here. Just with a net reduction of 2 FTEs, but then also the decrease of $1.3 million. Is this like a position mix kind of thing, or are these just
very
really
good-
high-paid net two
It's a good question.
FTEs?
It's a good catch, and I think we can.
Okay, yeah. So, good chunk of those positions are paid through a special education grant, the IDEA. So what I did to balance the budget this year, we usually include grant paid positions in the operating request, just because we don't know that we are going to receive that grant. We did receive confirmation that we will receive that grant in FY '27. So to make that budget request work, we removed those grant paid positions. That's why you see that high decrease.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's one
like a
year.
formulaic thing, could you, would it be possible to add them back and then put a second offset line that shows grant reduction? So rather than like the math that we just did, right, and said, oh, well, 2 people cost, like, so that the year, like next year, if we're doing the same thing, it doesn't become, oh, now we didn't get the grant, so we added 2 people back and it went up 1.2, which then we're gonna have a whole bunch of questions on it, like.
So we can do that. What I would say is in our budget book, we organize it that way, but this being a line by line that they vote for it's operating, grants aren't part of the operating, but I understand the point, and we can somehow make sure that this is illustrated correctly.
Yeah.
I think I get the idea that you're
That'd be
saying. It's
great.
like
Yeah,
show it, put it in, but then show it as, or even if the asterisk said, this is actually part of.
I'm glad we're asking the question on the negative instead of the positive side.
Yeah, sure.
We're easier to convince if it's a negative number.
Yes, it is, and Ms. Malati attended the MASBO, they do school business administrators, they do a huge couple of professional development days, and that came up during the training from the state that you had attended in many districts or the SAU.
Yeah, so a lot of, this is not something unique to Franklin. A lot of districts are going through the same issue, and they are removing grant-paid positions, so they don't have to lay off as many staff from the budget.
I guess I still fundamentally don't understand how that, like, saves any money. Like, at the macro level, we used to get the grant and we used to pay the salary, so we had the salary listed here, and it was showing up as like an operating budget problem, but then we were getting this grant income that offset it. Now we're no longer getting the grant income. Have we like misbalanced something that sits outside of the operating budget, where last year there was going to be 1.2 coming into a revolving fund or an enterprise fund or some other thing that's outside of this that now there's not, and we've just moved a problem to another spot?
So this usually supported any unbudgeted expenses for the special ed department. So when you include all the staff in your operating request, that leaves you a little buffer with the grants. If the grant come in short or not, at least if you have unbudgeted expenses out of the special ed department, you can pay for those expenses out of that grant. This year, FY '27, we won't be able to do that because we already are counting the grant paid positions out of the grant.
So what I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, I mean, I think in short, that's a yes, but with the caveat of like, we also had a little bit of a slush fund that built there that we now don't have, which is fine, like slush funds are not bad. I don't mean that in a negative way, but like, it is still, maybe it's not 1.2, but it's 1.1 or something like that we have moved just to a different budgeting problem in a different, I don't know where it goes, but revolving fund or somewhere else that money is not coming in anymore.
A good example, I know you meant it like slush fund, but I think a perfect example, you could have a student move into the district who requires a level of service that requires us to have staffing and personnel, and it could be a situation. Those pop up, those happen across every town in, probably the country, I would assume. So those things happen in the middle of the year. So with the grant, one of the things that's designed is like to help us when those things happen so that we can properly provide for the students that we are expected to enroll. And those do come up predictably. We count on move-ins that we didn't account for when we did the budget on January 27th, went in front of FinCom and Town Council by June, and then all of a sudden you get move-ins that are happening throughout. But once you budget, the good thing of doing the budget early is that we have a number, but we're also, like other departments and the town, when you budget earlier, you're making assumptions throughout the year. And when we locked this in, like froze this in time, it was January 27th. So then you think January, February, March, April, May, June, July, anyone who moves in and out of town, anyone who needs education services, these are expenses that we didn't ask for, but we're now maybe needing to provide through the resources that we have.
And I guess the better term is contingency.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we're taking more risk by doing it this way.
And not asking for it another way.
But asking,
Yeah.
yes, okay.
Can I just clarify? So you're using your 240 grant for staffing?
Most of it, yes. We do use a portion of it for contracted services, materials and supplies related to the specific students, but the majority covers
Even though they're
staffing.
incurred costs that you know you already have? So you're you're depleting your 240, I'm just trying to understand, I'm not judging. So you're depleting your 240, removing that expectation from the operating budget, right? And now you're leaving yourself with no flexibility for those move-ins or cases that require, right? And is that to balance the budget? Or is that just, I'm missing the
Yeah.
strategy behind that?
Yeah.
And not that I need to know it, but
No,
I'm
I
just
think-
curious, because it puts you in a very tight predicament, because now, if you're not writing anything in your 240 grant that's like subjective, that can be amended for funding in a different way, and you're allocating it towards staffing, you don't have any leeway.
I think we've been, and if I zoomed out, the scrutiny and pressure we've been under as a department, and many departments over the last few years, we've really been trying to come to the table with looking to demonstrate some, and I think you could argue fiscal stewardship, right? But also trying to look at our budget and try to be as transparent as possible about what we have, what's coming in, what we need, in order to try to build as much public trust as possible with our boards, with our community. We recognize I understand what you're saying. I would say that, this came out of MASBO, and many districts are facing fiscal challenges, and it was a sentiment that was shared during the presentation, and also with other communities to do that. So I think, leeway, I think what we're trying to demonstrate also is we don't have any other place to go, right? We're really trying our best to provide the services that people expect for the children in town, and I think, we will continue to try to make do with the resources that we have, but I think there's a bigger conversation around structural budget deficit that needs to continue to occur, and we're trying to put our best foot forward with with all departments to try to say, hey, this is where we're at, and then how do we work together to solve it, so.
Okay.
We're still on this page?
Wherever you want.
Wherever you would like.
Okay, because in my background, I see health services. You got testing, you have guidance counseling, you have psychology services, mental health services. Any of those people licensed?
All of them.
Yes.
Can you bill for them?
Good question.
All right. there's a mechanism, can you bill for them? If they're getting a referral from their physician, have you been able to figure, you can bill for them?
You mean bill for
Services.
insurances?
The insurances.
No, we do not bill for psychological service or mental health. No, we do not.
Something you may want to look at. Okay, billing service, and I think.
We do Medicaid reimbursement.
That's what he's saying.
Okay, yes, we do Medicaid reimbursement, so for our related services, so our speech, OT, yes, we do Medicaid reimbursement.
Okay, what about private? What about like Blue Cross?
No, we do not do that.
If they're an employee of the district and they're servicing the students enrolled in the district, then their role within the district is to support the kids that, so they couldn't, I don't think they can bill outside of that. It's part of like the.
If you have a
free and appropriate
physician's
education.
You may want to.
I mean, they could do it outside.
Educational versus.
someone-
Yeah, it's education versus clinical. We do
Yeah.
provide
Yeah.
educational services.
Yeah.
So,
So, jumping to I think the next page, we're adding a computer tech.
Yes.
Could we live without them?
Honestly, I think I can actually, I wanted to clarify something that came up yesterday too when I was watching the game too, but I was watching both at the same time. There was a conversation around technology department and the staffing, and there was a comment around him, where, is he here still? Hi, Tim.
Yeah.
Tim losing staff. So if we go back to FY '22, he had 13 people in his department. Through '23, '24, we get into the failed overrides. We didn't make any cut to that department, just knowing that there was a 13-person team supporting town and school. And then there was a reduction to a part-time reduction, 0.5, to a secretary in the technology department. And then they did reduce last year to 12, and that was the only reduction they received. There has been turnover within the department, so I can understand optically, but I want to just be clear, there's been 13 people since 2022, we then went to 12, and now we're trying to get back to 13, and that was our plan, to ask for that within the budget.
And again, we balance this out elsewhere. So this is one of those 7 FTEs where we went down 7 elsewhere to be able to budget for this instead of just going up. So we kept our net at 0 in order to accommodate this.
Can I ask a question about tech? Chromebooks, Ryan's favorite. So just, I know we have, here he comes. No, I know we have this big conversation about it. I noticed that there's no budget for it, right? And I know that historically, we use capital funding for Chromebooks, right?
Yes.
So just wondering, kind of what you talked about earlier with the facilities, is it something that we should be looking at budgeting for?
And Tim Raposa, Director of Technology, and you know, we've had this conversation before, plenty of times, and the last time I had it was with Jonna, and the answer was, if we want to put $125,000 in my regular technology budget on the school side, we certainly can do that. It's, you know, I don't manage the money, but, you know, that's really a financial question. It being in capital gives us, you know, the ability to keep that budget line item, you know, lower, the overall school budget lower by $125,000. I get it, it's needed every year. It should be in regular budget. But there are a lot of things that should be in regular budget, and we had that conversation, I think it was at the town council meeting?
Many.
Was it? Yeah, many times. And this is just one of them, and across all departments. So, it really is a financial decision. The money is the money is the money. It all comes out of the same bucket eventually, right? So, it's a tough question to answer.
Okay.
I guess I would defer to, you know, the opinion of the, you know.
I mean, I understand you're being fiscally responsible, I appreciate it, but I
Yeah.
think to our point that we've been talking about is, these are things that are not nice to haves, right? So if it's something that we need, that needs to be done every year, capital projects are at the discretion, right? So sometimes we may have them, sometimes we may not, sometimes we don't like the ones that are in front of us, but we vote them through. So I think that we have, and again, we can't do it everywhere, because I know every department has this problem, but you also don't have any enterprise accounts, right? Which also plays into a limited capacity for you to plan out. And I know, Tim, we're not giving you one, so I know that's your dream. But I do think that at some point, we have to look at that, because it is a cost that we incur every year, and I think it's frustrating for people to have these conversations every year on things that we really do need in the budget. I appreciate, and I'm not, again, judging, I appreciate your efforts to come in and be extremely lean, but then I also appreciate that there needs to be some advocacy for those things that we know exist year after year, and that we're pulling them out of capital in hopes that there's money there, and that they make tier 1 or tier 2 or, tier 45 or whatever.
And maybe what we really just need is a recommendation of where you would like that money. And because, as from what I remember from the history lesson from the police chief there, the recommendation years ago, how this caused this problem, was the recommendation was take it all out and put it in capital so that we could reduce our annual budgets, right? And keep our, so we wouldn't have to pass an override, 25 years ago, or whenever that was. So if the recommendation now is to put something back into the regular budget, that comes from you folks and town council, so.
Not us, because we don't control the budget.
I think that's also,
Yeah,
to your question.
I'm saying a recommendation, I'm not saying a directive, just,
I think that's part of a larger conversation and strategy around, if we were asked of what would we include in our budget, I think every department would have an answer today for you, if we were going to include everything. And is that a direction that, a goal of the governing bodies around wanting to move and say, listen, if we need to increase the pie, what does the pie, I think every department would be responsible for outlining specifically what that pie would include. And that's a good example of. 125,000 annually would be dedicated towards budgeting. Like that kind of conversation could happen. But in this context for FY27, as we try to solve this budget, I watched last night I was the whole time. And I know a lot of it, you're all paying attention, you're doing your job as a financial oversight committee to look at this, and I think we're all trying to do our best to answer it, but I think there's other ways we have to solve, I think, a bigger issue. And I want to just leave with that, because I don't want it to appear as though a lack of advocacy, because my advocacy is all I've been trying to do for the past few years on trying to do this, but ultimately, I'm also balancing. What I noticed in the approach is, I think the more public trust we build, the better chance we have to solve this in a way that can meet our needs. So that was the approach that we took.
I might suggest this would be something we would throw on our agenda post-budget season to revisit and actually have this conversation in a more strategic manner.
That was a great conversation for the joint budget.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I would first, Paul beat me to the punch, but that was perfect. I think that's something for the joint budget, but I also believe this issue has come up at the Finance Committee through both of these meetings and all year. I think the Finance Committee should consider, as part of their budgetary recommendation to the council this year, how do you see that fit? I mean, this is an issue that's been going on for 20 years, right? This is way before me and before any of us, really. Maybe not Tim, maybe since he's been here.
Before, yeah.
And to Tim's point, for historical context, he's right. I think the Chief Lynch has spoken to this all the time because he's been here the longest. When you look back 15 years, they took a lot of the capital out to avoid the inconvenient truth. And at some point, I think we're just starting to shuffle chairs just to shuffle chairs, right? We're literally just moving things around to kind of avoid, that Al Gore moment of, the climate is warming. It's just here because we've got tasers, bulletproof vests, police cruisers, fire protection gear for our firefighters. These are not, I think, Jen's point, these are not like wants, these are needs. Chromebooks, special education vans, curriculum investments, there's a whole bunch of things on their capital list. Ryan, you asked last night, give me a number for facilities, right? I mean, if you're looking at getting capital numbers, just to start to reverse this 20-year problem, you're looking at about $500,000 for police. You're looking at roughly $500,000 for fire. That's based on what y'all just approved. You're looking at about $500,000 a year for schools if you're, and to be blunt, 125,000, as somebody who has gone through the Chromebook exercise now for a decade, particularly in 2000, when we gave $1 million of Town Cares Act money to buy those computers, and kudos to Tim for being way ahead of it, we bought them earlier than everybody else. It's kind of scary to sit here 6 years later where we were very blatant with the public in 2020 when we bought all those, we would need a replacement schedule, right? And then if you're looking at facilities, when I was looking at the numbers, if you're looking at a tier 2 number, you're ballparking about another $500,000. That's light for facilities, it's very light. That's, you know, that's some of the smaller items, not the big stuff at $1 million or more. Those are different pieces. You're looking at $50,000, $30,000, $20,000, a fridge, a stove, a compressor, a boiler. You know, you're looking at $500,000. So you're looking at about $2 million, roughly, from those 4 departments. That does not include the DPW piece, which I know you all saw the council presentation where Brutus has a whole nother. But I leave DPW a little bit separate because you have enterprise funds and there are other mechanisms to deal with some of these issues that might be revenue pieces out, but you're looking at about $2 million if you're looking to take that capital and structurally put it in the budget to help all those 4 departments. So you're looking at about $2 million.
One more technology question.
So-
Can you
Sure.
just sorry.
Can I?
Yeah.
To that. So I hear you, and I don't like ruling anybody out on technicalities, but I have to express that I'm slightly agitated.
Okay.
That I asked yesterday for the list of facilities twice, what that would be. I asked again today.
Yeah.
And no answer was given, so I took my question marks out of my sheet and put 0 for facilities.
Okay.
So, like, Jamie, if you want to send me a list, please do, but
Right.
like, I've been trying to keep track of the list of, like, if we are going to use free
Right.
cash, I have $340K in police cruisers, I have $460K that Tim laid out for
Yep.
Chromebooks and a 5-year replacement of, I think, teacher
Right.
notebooks or whatever, and I have $200K for ICE. If there's a facilities thing, like,
well,
I'd like to get that in, so
Ryan, I'll
please
give you
share.
a list, but to be honest, like, there's a whole capital plan out there. Like, there's a tier 1,
But
tier
it's
2,
not-
tier 3.
It's not every tier 2 thing. What I
But-
was asking is if you just had the, like, this is going to be a regular thing, something justifiable to the public of, we know this is a regular cost, we just pushed it to capital because that was convenient.
I see.
Like, that's a little bit different than just like the boiler broke and it's a one-off and it happens every 30 years.
Yeah.
It's we always have to replace chillers, 3 a year, so we know we're gonna have this.
Sure.
So,
Okay, fair
please
enough.
get that to me.
Yeah, I will.
Lucas, I would ask you the same question. What, you know, if you had some, I don't think you guys had very much in the capital request, but do you have something that you've pushed out of your budget that, like, really should have been in, but you've done that to try to?
Like that we've included in capital, that's already in there, or?
Yes.
Yeah. So Chromebooks is one. You want to pull up that?
Teacher laptops.
Yeah, I think Ryan just referenced those. Teacher laptop.
Teacher laptops, yeah.
Yep, those are the 2 technology. Then, we had camera replacement schedule in there that was part of capital, it was voted in, if you remember, from the town council. But ultimately, that's keeping up with the replacement schedule for our cameras, but also I would wonder about our servers and we talked about the server replacement schedule, so that's not annual, but I do wonder, maybe that is more of a capital project if it's not something that's recurring. But it's predictable, it's on a schedule, I think.
Yeah.
So we got the special
Yeah.
ed van.
Special education van fleet, we have been replacing those. Mrs. Morano, I think we will be in better shape. We thank you to FinCom, Town Council, for the work to help us, and Jamie for allocating one of the vans 2 years ago, and Jeff Roy, who helped us get a different van. We've been able to catch up on a fleet that we had 3 that were about to not get approved for inspection, and we are now out of the red, and we're building that back. So that's something I think would come off of being annual once we get through the next one. I think we have one left that's 10 years old.
This
Yeah.
didn't make the list.
It didn't make the list. This was the facilities, floor repair, wall repair, painting. Now that we've reorged schools, we were able to do some initial things, but there was a whole list of things that just we didn't have the money to do. So we've put in 150,000 was in the capital plan, you might recall, and that's really to hit on, we have missing tiles in some of the schools, in the schools that we're using to educate, and a lot of the repairs that are happening, either in the walls, in some of the schools, some of the bathrooms, some of those things, so.
And I guess so I'm not to be dismissive of any of those things, but I think those all fall in sort of a one-off. I think the vans is the closest, but even those, the intent, or I'll say the sentiment, at least as I've understood it from some people here and from town council, isn't for us to add roller coaster-ish items to the operating budget, that now every third year you hit some balloon that causes structural problem. It is to say, we need 2 police cruisers every year. That's just a baseline item. So I think those are all valid, but I think those all have a valid place in the capital request, because you would do them once, or you would do them on a weird schedule, like something sort of outside of the every year, we've got this number, we've just kicked it off the budget. Is that correctly understanding the things you listed? Or is there anything in there?
I reviewed capital, I think I answered what I thought was the question, just what did we ask for? So I think the bigger points were some of the technology replacement items, and then other than that, I think some of it falls into facilities, and I think that was what you heard earlier. And then I think curriculum-wise is the only area I would say is where we annually have to replenish some of the curriculum and the materials. Do you want to talk to it?
I was just going to mention curriculum.
And do you have a number that goes with that?
We can get you a projection of our curriculum replacement. Do you want to talk?
It varies, but if we look at like a K-5 implementation for literacy, and you're equipping every teacher, kindergarten through 5th grade, with a curriculum, putting books in front of kids. I think our last contract was $570,000. We used some one-time funding to then extend that a few years, but we ultimately have a curriculum revision, a 5-year cycle that we've kind of spread out. Our biggest ticket items would be K-5 math, K-5 literacy, because those were just purchasing resources and site licenses for a different curriculum for a larger amount of students, whereas if we have to replace AP Psych books, we're talking about three sections of courses, 40, 60 kids. So, but we have a cycle of every single department, every single curriculum area, every single grade level, and we have this 5-year cycle. So we're looking every year, generally between, like I'm guesstimating, I'd have to go back, but probably between $100,000 to $500,000, depending upon where you go.
You're high.
I'm sorry?
Like you're low on a
Yeah.
best case year where nothing fell out.
Correct.
Still about
Because
100K.
maybe that year it's, world language, PE, and,
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
History and science and math.
Can you just refresh my memory on tech? So K through 5 carts?
In school. They don't not take home. 6 through 12 is take home.
6 through 12 take home.
Middle and high.
That's all.
For now.
I have an overall question, not on these lines. Are you familiar with the concept of administrative bloat? And what I mean by that is articles that are out there that say, that show the projected line cost of administration rising significantly higher than the cost of teachers and students, which remain, relatively stable, or in the current environment maybe are going down a little bit, but it's not a huge amount. So, and that's not a Franklin thing. That's not, that's the projections and those charts and stuff that, all that information that's out there is like the whole, the United States. So I guess my question is, I don't think that that's not a real thing. I don't know how we, I don't want to say the word justify, because that makes it sound like that's like a defensive word. So I'm not saying that, I'm saying, but it's a sticky thing to say, well, we haven't increased teachers, or, and if you were watching all night last night, So I'm gonna ask every single
Sure.
person who, you know, where could you cut? And I think my question to your team would be, if you have to cut, so where are you cutting, but from administration only, not from teachers?
So we're going to pull something up for you.
Yeah,
Oh,
this has
look at
come
you
up, I
guys.
think this, and we, Shannon, we've received those types of questions over the last 3 years, just in different people and from different perspectives. In Franklin, when we did the consolidation, for example, we went from 3 middle schools to 1, so you had 3 principals, you go to 1 principal. We then looked at what our staffing, but we put this slide up, I think we can make it a little bit larger, because a lot of the question was around, how do we even compare to the state? Like, where is Franklin at in comparison? So we started to break this down, so if you look at the graph, it shows you the leadership and our teachers and our paraprofessionals, but if you look at we're below the state average in there. The other thing I'd point out, you know, we have approximately 12 district-level employees for, you know, 4,300 student facility, school district. And when we look at, we have about 21 school-based leaderships. When we built them in the reorg, we looked at about 500 students for every assistant principal at our pre-K to 8. And ultimately, that was, you know, we have 500 kids basically in your K to 2 and your 3 to 5, 1 AP and 1 principal. Oops, sorry. And so basically, between those positions, you're talking, they have approximately 50 to 53 staff with 500 kids, and that's how that's broken down. But ultimately, we put this up to kind of show where Franklin falls within this. Our administration represents approximately 3% of our FTE within the district. So I feel as though we're appropriately sized, and, you know, I think, Natalie, I'm thinking back to pre-reorg, some of the questions that you had around, hey, how are we organized? We're spread out among 5 elementaries. Now we're in 2 complexes, but it's, you know, it's K to 2, 3 to 5. We're at 3 middle schools, we have 1 now, right? That idea, I think, you know, the work, and I think Jamie referenced it earlier today, the work we've done over the past few years to kind of reorganize the district and get as, you know, appropriately lean as possible to support what we need. You know, I think that's what we've done, and I don't feel as though we have bloat in the admin level in Franklin.
Bloat being the technical
Yeah.
term, not that I.
No, I used it because it's what you
Yeah,
said, but I
yeah,
know
no,
what you meant.
I just didn't want you to think that I was
I don't think that- I don't
implying
think
that.
But I think to highlight that further, so really your main question focuses on the black and the gray bars that we have on the left side there with the leadership for the district and, you know, district-wide instructional leaders. So you see that we are far below the state average for those ratios. But more importantly is that you look at the orange bar in the middle, that's our special ed teachers, and then you look at the yellow on the right, and that's our paraprofessionals. So we are actually above state averages for the people interacting most directly with the students who need them. So not only are we really slim on the, you know, on the administration side, but we focus very heavily on exactly who's interacting with the kids to make sure that they get what they're needing.
Yes, and my suggestion wasn't the cutting of the teachers or,
Of course.
you know, the direct, it's the
Yeah.
truly administration
Yeah.
only. But
Do we have a disproportionate population of people receiving special education services?
We offer more in-district programming, I think, than some districts do. I think that might be one of the reasons when you staff a specialized program where you might otherwise send a student out to an out-of-district placement. When you have more programs available, you can enroll kids within your own district. I think that's, Paula, your presentation, you talked about that. Do you want to hit on it?
Yes. So we have about, I want to say I'm 23%, I might be off, it might be 22, 23%. So we're just slightly above the state average, but like Lucas shared, we have many in-district programs, so we keep our students within the district. And with those in-district programs, we need a little bit more staff because they have more intensive needs. So you need more paraprofessionals to provide that support, you know, and more related service providers, so.
And that's highlighted here, just showing the overall costs and what we're able to save in district for 5 of our main programs. Bottom right, you're seeing that's how much we're saving by running these different programs and having all those extra professionals working directly with the students, so 1.7 million. And this is something that I know Paul has really tried to advocate for expanding consistently. One of the main things, and you had actually mentioned it when it came to school choice earlier, being able to kind of look at students coming in. These have very high ratios, or very, I guess you'd say very low ratios. So very, very small number of students per teacher, sometimes 2 teachers for just a couple of students. And if we have a student come in, we need to make sure that we can continue to support them. We can't say, hey, great, thanks so much for showing up. Somebody just moved into district now, you need to leave. So when we're looking at really plotting that out, that's why Lucas was harping a lot on the stability aspect, is we need to make sure to say, great, if we're letting someone in first grade, wonderful, we're really making good use of our resources and our skills, but we need to make sure that we're not displacing a Franklin resident that may or may not move in, who we're required to support in that same exact window, when we might be able to only accommodate 4 students in a class. So it's a really, really tight scenario that we're looking at.
And I'll say, I appreciate the savings we're able to show here. I guess moving off of the financial consideration for a moment, if you go back to the previous graph, am I reading it correctly to see that we have more than average special education teachers and special education paraprofessionals, but less than the state average general education teachers is that per student?
Yes.
So, I mean, and maybe just less of a
Per
question.
100, it's per 100 students, that decimal?
Yeah, I mean, maybe less of a question, more of just a sort of public comment. Like, this feels like, yes, we've saved money, potentially at the expense of our teacher to student ratio for general education teachers. Like, we are less than the average there.
At the same time, we wouldn't necessarily be able to support more teachers if we had less in-house, because those are all legally mandated. We would have to pay for those students to be getting the same level of service outside of our district. So that 1.7 million in savings, we would have to expend to make sure to maintain the requirements for those students. And that would not be able to support, like, we basically, it wouldn't allow us to suddenly have.
Sorry, yeah, I think we're speaking past each other. I was
Yeah.
saying, it seems like we could do with more general education teachers, making absolutely no change to special, like, not commenting on our special education ratio at all, leaving that exactly as it is. Like, I think we offer a great service there, but our general education teacher population and ratio to students is suffering because of budget considerations, if I'm.
Well, we've provided our breakdowns this year, just for full transparency of class sizes and where they look. They're falling within our range for these particular grades. What I'd say is, a good example is we reduced the 2 digital learning integrationist positions we had within the district. So there's an example of we don't have anyone doing that role right now in the district. We prioritized a few other needs that we had that had emerged, as I mentioned at the beginning of, I think hour 3, I think I mentioned. But ultimately, we did that, not that I would, because if you ask me again, that question around, it's not just recurring expenses like Chromebooks. I would say a recurring expense would be to have a position like that that's just in your budget annually. That was the other piece, is what staffing would be in your budget annually? Because I was really harping on fixed, like, tangible products.
Yes.
But I think I would argue I would have kept the 2 digital learning integrations in my budget as a recurring thing, and that might be a future ask. That's a part of a larger discussion if we're asked about how to build, what would our budget look like with everything we think we need. So that's.
Can I jump in on that? Got it that time, Steve. Yeah, wow. So we talked last night about, tell me the special coordinator for the software? Munis administrator,
Yeah.
right? So we talked about Munis administrator to expand capacity in the products that we currently pay for and use. So I'm going to go back to tech, Tim. You don't have to participate, but you're welcome to. When we talk about utilizing our technology in an instructional way, talk to me a little bit about instructional technology specialist who would be then performing a very similar role on the school side that the Munis coordinator would for our capacity building internally.
We had those positions, Jen. The digital learning integrationists were, all the software we invested, they
Okay.
were teaching, they were working with teachers on how to implement the software.
And where are they in the budget?
They're not in the budget. They're reduced this year.
And how many were?
There was 2.
2, okay.
And we had slowly kind of declined. We're also at a point where we're looking to see where can we look at the needs
Yeah.
of technology across software, hardware, and try to have a larger plan. But ultimately, they were not in this particular budget this year.
Okay, and I'm just bringing it up because
Yeah.
I know that was a big conversation we had yesterday about
course.
having that system and expanding the capacity of that system when we invest a lot of money in it, and then building efficiencies, right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about technology and the Chromebook, I just wanted to kind of add that in because I do think that, I didn't see it and I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing.
And I support that strategy, and I support the Munis position for the purposes that I heard
For
and
the
watched
same
last night.
concept, yep.
The same concept, and I
Yep.
think that's those types of positions, if you're trying to utilize, I read an article similar to that, like the companies, whether you're private or public, the amount of money we invest in products and software, to not utilize them to their fullest capacity is really a missed opportunity. So I think we share that same sentiment, and we'll look for ways to creatively do that now, but yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else on anything?
I was gonna ask a question you've heard 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Okay, the revolving account.
Sure.
I notice it's gone down by $700,000, and your expenses have gone down by a lot also because of the transfer of insurance. There are other costs that throughout my learning experience here, I have listened to that are in the general budget, that are allocated, that are school-related expenses, i.e., we have custodians, we have fringe benefits and so on and so forth. We have debt, we have interest. How can that revolving account be used to help subsidize some of the other expenses? I mean, we talked about earlier, do we stop watering the fields?
So I think-
And I understand the revolving account it's a restricted type of, temporary restricted type of account that has to be used within the parameters of what it was generated from. So how can we get creative and somehow support other services with that revolving account?
So I think one of the first things to look at.
I'm thinking globally now, as I look at what the school budget is, it's not really $75,000. It's more like 93,000 when you allocate all the costs that are associated with the schools.
So one of the first things I think to look at is that revolving funds do not completely encompass and pay for some of the things that they're actually collected for. So things such as athletics or buses. We actually take on a significant amount of cost in our operating budget in order to cover the full cost of providing those services. So there's not extra lying around for athletics in order to be able to run what we're doing for athletics. In addition to all the fees, in addition to what you see in the revolving funds, we're kicking in roughly $400K from our operating budget in order to support those. Transportation is a very similar setup. So we don't actually have a lot lying around that can just be handed off in another direction without increasing the deficit in our own operating budget and putting us in even more dire straits than we're already in.
I did see a graph that you had in the school budget where you showed the trend in the revolving account.
Yes.
And so, at some point in time, it built up, so obviously there was a profit in that type of an account. That's
So
how
there-
I would interpret that.
Yeah,
There was
there's not
excess
profits.
fees not being used.
There's not excess fees. What it is a matter of how we are drawing from it versus, so usually in those years when we don't draw as heavily from it, we are absorbing more of that cost in the operating budget. The past couple of years, we've had a lot of trouble doing that, so we've had to draw very heavily from the revolving funds, which is why you've seen them drop down a lot more. They're also well below the policy that we've set, where we want to have basically a year's worth of expenses in there, and we haven't been able to maintain that for the past couple of years. So there's not actually, it's not the slush fund that I think people have kind of come to think of it as. It doesn't have extra in there. It helps us to offset the costs, but it doesn't actually cover some of the main ones that we have to worry about from the day-to-day perspective.
Just a tangible example would be, it would cost roughly $1 million to run an athletic program. We collect and we're able to offset those costs by about 670,000 of the revolving, the fees that we collect to offset it. So we still have to pay for some of the programming, but ultimately it doesn't cover, and I think in the example, if someone had an impression that we collected $2 million and it cost us $1 million to run it, that would be a profitable opportunity, but it's the inverse. So it defrays the cost to operate the program.
So as I was to look at it now, you were saying that, and I agree with the strategy, always have something in the bank. So what would that balance be to maintain 1 year's worth of cash in there, whatever you want to call it? And then what does that free up?
So being able to actually get to a point where you free up costs is one thing. We can definitely take that as an action to get back. We actually have a couple of things such as buses that we're right in the process of negotiating for the next couple of years. So we can get you some more accurate numbers on that specifically. But yeah, it's not a small number. We're talking, I don't think we'd be at 10 million, but not far off.
Yeah, because again.
Also could only offset the cost that, and you mentioned it earlier, but.
I mean, you can
yeah.
get creative in allocating
Yeah,
certain
yeah.
costs to help, subsidize in a sense,
Well, so like a great example of that actually would be like our food services. So our food services group is actually very proactive in being able to replace major capital items within the schools and things such as refrigerators and whatnot. So we do try to really leverage that in a couple of instances where we can and where there is that kind of overlap that you're referring to. So in those specific instances, we already are very proactive in taking that into account, where we're then helping to replace structural things within the schools instead of coming to the town and asking for their support with that. So that's kind of the rare situation where our food services are able to do that. That's also one of those things that is really at risk in the coming couple of years, depending on how the budget for the state goes, because one of the main reasons that we can do that is because of the free lunches. It's been a huge boon for us for that specific department. If that goes away, then we'd pretty much immediately have to stop with a lot of that ability to reinvest and focus just on being able to sustain the services that we offer.
Because if you weren't subsidizing your budget with a revolving account, there's another issue that we have to deal with.
And we do subsidize, we would continue to.
I'm saying if we
Yes,
weren't,
100%,
we weren't.
yes. yeah.
That's where we're getting back to
But
the
we-
early discussion.
we are.
I
We
think-
will.
Is it really 5 million?
Right.
Type of thing?
So I think too, the custodial piece that you talked about, that was 20-plus years ago. I mean, I don't know the exact year, but that money was reallocated from the school budget to the town budget.
Fully understand the history.
Yeah, so I think that that's another thing, like when we're shifting these costs, we're not just shifting them without some loss. And it happened a while ago, right?
Well, just to be clear, and I've done slideshows on this, and it's on the site, and I'm
Yeah.
happy to send it. It's not updated for FY '27 or '6, because we're still in the middle of the year, but, you're looking at overall about 18 to 20 million of the town side costs, and it's across the board. It's unemployment insurance, it's property and casualty insurance, it's a certain percentage of our admin staff. You're talking about retirement and pension, the healthcare, the GIC retire, I mean, there's a substantial amount. But I will say in terms of the revolving funds, to Paul's credit, to Paul's point, there are very limited ways, and you can be assured I have dragged every single one of these through the mud over the years. There are very limited ways. But there's also creative ways, and I appreciate John's work on one issue, on a couple of issues. Number one, healthcare. As we make this transition, the finance staff downstairs, Carrie and John, are working together. Instead of transferring the money to us and then paying it out versus us, what we're going to do is charge the actual healthcare account to the revolving fund, right? So if somebody's an athletic employee and they're full-time and they're being paid full through the revolving funds, and that's where the revenue source is, if they choose healthcare from the town, we're just going to charge that against the revolving fund, so it actually never hits our budget, and our accountants don't have to do 2 or 3, 4 transactions. There's also one other small so that's an efficiency downstairs that they're doing to try to, from a workplace place. But then also, I think there is one small opportunity, and I know they're still working on this, and it's been very busy, which is around the rentals of the facilities and some of those other pieces, where we want the same thing to happen, right? Because we're paying out, as you saw in the facilities budget, all the cleaning supplies, all the equipment maintenance, all of those things, and we would like to have that same thing. But I want to let you know, it's not going to result in some amount of money that's going to change the barometer of where we're at in the overall operating budget. So, Tom, I appreciate the comment. We are very, very creative on these things. In fact, the fact that we all have one technology director, we have one facilities director, my HR director and I do all the property and casualty, all the unemployment, All of these things are actually efficiencies, because the fact that the town does all the lawn mowing, through our DPW, means that we have one facilities in DPW. Most towns actually already have, most school districts have a whole nother facilities department that doesn't talk to the town facilities department. They have another grounds department in school districts that doesn't talk to the DPW. We've exhausted almost every possible efficiency we could ever have between the two teams. And at some point, it becomes almost we're spending too much time trying to find some nugget that we're never going to find. I mean, we've scoured pretty much everything, and I can tell you, all of our stuff worked very, very collaboratively together.
I'm looking at also in another viewpoint, an optic type of viewpoint,
Yeah.
where, the school can say, listen, this is how much the town's supporting us. I mean, I think there's another optic here. I mean, I think a comment that you made the other night that, based upon what is required for us to fund and, the $30 million, it was like a 1.3 excess that the town was paying, 13%.
Yep, there you go,
Okay, there you go.
13%.
So you allocate more to it, you can bring that number up.
That's all calculated in the equation. So
That's factored into that.
That's factored in. It's called net school spending, and we do the report with the schools, and we collaborate all that. We have a net school spending agreement with the school district, and, we probably need to update that a little bit, but to be honest with you, it's not gonna change those numbers that they put up there. You're just, again, shuffling chairs to kind of shuffle chairs. Eventually you're just moving things around and moving around, but it doesn't change that number. It doesn't change the whole harmless figure. We've already incorporated everything that's eligible into those numbers. So I hope that optic at some point can be, that narrative can be turned around to say, we've looked at everything, we've looked under all those rocks, and we've done everything that we can.
Attempt to be very quick, because I've mentioned it some other times, but from a historical perspective, in 2006, there was a school budget cut of a business administrator. Person was appointed. In 2007, the audit report that was released over Thanksgiving, appropriately, led to a fiscal audit result with a joint budget school committee in January of 2008. Two things came out of that, three really, but two initially. One, the policy establishing the revolving funds, and they are akin to enterprise funds. Separate note, there's two audios that I've done with Jonna and Carrie that get into those details. They were put as part of the budget information package, and thanks to the town for doing that. But those additional details around revolving funds, et cetera, are covered in that as well. But, so, the fiscal audit results, forensic audit results, joint meeting, both committees here. The revolving fund was a policy established by the school committee to avoid the accounting errors that led to the forensic audit. So the policy they have, they've been violating, and it varies by account. They're supposed to keep 1 year's worth, and clearly transportation is more than athletics, more than lunch, but it's 1 year's worth per fund. They've been violating that in order to balance. That's separate. So that was the one that came out of it. Second, they hired Miriam Goodman, which then brought the fiscal responsibility a little bit more so to the school budgeting. On the town side, from that point forward, it was another 3 or 5 years where the audit report had management letters, but then all those items got cleaned up. And since that point, I think it's 2016, 2017, the management report on the audit, which the next one's coming up, I think in May, you said?
May 13th, actually, we have a clean audit.
Right. Has been clean, right? So what was done got corrected, has been operating, continuing to do so. The other piece, in the optics and the storytelling, you are moving funds back and forth creatively to solve the issue, but the biggest issue that we need to truly get to, and hopefully that's going to be coming out of the joint budget sessions as they start, is this is all changing chairs on the deck of the Titanic. We still haven't addressed the revenue issue because all we're doing is just using what we have, and we don't have enough. My 2 cents.
Okay, guys, do we have anything else? Really, are we done?
Can I just make a quick comment? I
Yes.
just want to thank you, as someone who's been on here for a little bit, the level of transparency and education on all of this is so very good. I really appreciate it. And I know I've said this to you before, but I know the redistricting was a very challenging thing, but if you had not done that and pushed to move so quickly, I mean, we'd be in a bit even bigger pickle. So just want to acknowledge that.
I don't believe in snaps, I think we can clap at adults, but yes.
Snaps.
It's
like a cheerleading thing.
Okay, I think we're done with this type of stuff for tonight. I'd like to have one discussion among us. Jamie, Ryan has a list of, I don't know, probably $20 million over there. And at what point do we want to discuss that? Is that something?
Discuss the $20 million?
Yeah.
So, do you want to use that on Thursday?
Well,
I'd like to avoid Thursday. These have been long nights.
Sure.
People have other things to do in their lives, particularly sleep at this time of night, especially for the old people.
I'm old, I would.
hey.
I mean, is it something that we have meetings on the?
Well, here's the thing. So just I think you guys gotta, I mean, if you want to give up Thursday, that's fine. I don't think tomorrow night should be very long. I mean, the police and fire budgets, I will say DPW could be long. But I think you have to have a conversation, because there's a lot of differing views, and that's good. I think it's healthy, and I think it's wise, but I think y'all have to have a discussion in and of itself. I think if you wait till May, I'm going to guarantee you the numbers are going to shuffle around depending on the healthcare issue, probably quite a bit. And so I think you have to have a discussion as you're entering with this budget right now, and after all the work you've done this week. I think you have to have a discussion, hopefully this week, while it's fresh. I think also including Steve's comment. I mean, I think we are talking a lot about shuffling chairs around. I think it's helpful, it's good, it's collaborative. I think we hopefully have passed any optical doubt that everybody here is working together, putting their best feet forward to do the best they can. But y'all have a lot of differing views, and that's okay. But I think you have to hammer out at least a sketch or a list of, with consensus, if you're going to make proposed recommendation cuts, what are those? Are they there? Are you going to do that? Are you not? And then figure out, so that my thought is that you would have a comprehensive recommendation based on the budgets that's there. I also want to acknowledge and work with Kerry to help draft a letter and document that and make a list, so it's a formal recommendation and document, right? You know, and then also I would say this: anything your voice speaks right now, as I go into after the open enrollment is over, don't forget there's probably a healthcare deficit in our self-insured plan right now too. We're watching what Beacon Hill does. There's a lot of balls in the air. But I also want to acknowledge that depending on how the open enrollment, and I've acknowledged this in my narrative multiple times, so it's there. Whatever your comprehensive committee view is, will also help me and the staff as we get open enrollment numbers toward Memorial Day. I'd like to come back to you on May 27th, and then June 3rd. Those two finance committee meetings, I'll be able to have a revised budget based on the healthcare numbers, which will also possibly have a revised school budget, because as I've acknowledged, if there are fewer subscribers, I'm not just going to transfer the 8.8 million because that's the assumption. If there are, strap on your seatbelt, if there are more subscribers than we anticipate, that number on their end may be higher than 8.8. We all understand those details. But I think if you have a agreed upon consensus recommendation on a series of cuts or revenue strategies, that helps us go into those May 28th, 7th, and June 3rd meetings with you with something that hopefully reflects your voice. And that, I think, will help the process with the council and everybody as we get into the actual vote on June 10th. I hope that makes sense. So I think it's incredibly important that you do something this week, and then give us, a couple weeks to draft a letter and a list, and probably work with the chair or another designee to make sure we've captured it correctly, and that, it's just gonna take a little while to document that document.
Are you relatively confident that tomorrow night isn't gonna be 2.5 hours?
That's a question for you guys.
No, I don't think we
No.
should set some time expectation.
No,
I think we
I'm
should
not
ask.
setting a time, I'm saying,
Police and fire
I've
should be
been through
quick.
these.
I mean, they're 97% personnel, so either you want to cut cops and firemen or you don't, right? It's pretty straight up. DPW though is deep. So that could be another one like facilities, and don't forget there are 4 enterprise funds, which I know people will probably just push aside a little bit, but because they're not operating budget, they're not in deficit, all that, it's different. But if you want to have a recommendation tomorrow night or a discussion, and it's a question for you guys, do you feel like you all have a sense of where you want to go?
No, because we don't
was just gonna
understand,
ask,
from,
how do we
as new
talk?
people, we don't understand what we're allowed to do.
You can do anything
So,
you
are
want.
we- Well, I mean, can we? So.
Yeah,
How do
you
we
can.
talk to each
I'd like
other to
Like-
actually work on like in corporate America?
I was
We would
talking.
be in a
So you
meeting.
can stop talking because I was
We
talking.
stop talking.
I didn't stop talking, I breathed.
You know how
Mr. Chairman, point of order?
So, my
So why do we have a whiteboard
question
together? We
is, how
can't
do
do one at
we
a
do,
time.
how do we do this together? Because to your point,
Yep.
we do maybe have some disparate ideas of how we would approach
Yep.
this.
You have to
It's a good-
set a meeting. It can be Zoom, and I have to post the
But
meeting.
can it be?
Wait a minute.
here?
You can do it here.
Oh.
What you need to do is say,
I understand what
I
you
make
do.
a motion to, reduce the finance committee's budget in account 135 by $1,000. And then you take a vote to make sure that there's a vote that reflects a majority in the affirmative of that issue. I make a motion that I want to reduce X budget by $100,000 for whatever, and you have to you can do whatever you want, you can recommend as a group. But what can't happen, okay, is we've got 8 separate opinions with no consensus, because that's just opinion.
That's what I'm
You need a
suggesting.
real committee vote, and then my guess is at the end, maybe some people will say, I don't want to cut this issue out of the budget, right? But just use it like this. 2 people may say, I don't agree that we should cut the facilities budget. 2 people may say, you want to cut the facilities budget. Well, how much do you want to? Does anybody else have an opinion? Well, I don't think that's a good idea. I think you debate it, right? And then you say, okay, well, I want to cut 200,000, but some people over there want to cut nothing. Maybe the compromise is we trim the facilities budget 100,000, right? And then 8 people say, oh yeah, I'm in agreement with that. We have to make a few cuts. This isn't good, but we're going to be compromise agents and we're going to do that. And then what we'll do is we'll take that list, okay, of whatever y'all agree on, and then we will draft a letter to the council and other officials, and we'll have an actual list. And then what Evan's going to do is he will populate that in the budget book where you see department head request, town administrator request. There's a finance committee column. We will populate that column with what your formal recommendation is. Then the town council gets their bite at the apple in May, and then obviously in June when they have the final vote. So you have to kind of talk to one another, but you can also say, I'm just throwing it out there, I think we could raise revenue by doing this. I want to make a motion that I think we should discuss at a joint budget subcommittee the possibility of an override or a debt exclusion or borrowing capacity. I've also said to Ryan, I just sent him an email and said, part of the conversation about facilities is, do you want to do debt service to pay for some of the capital issues? I mean, there's a lot of tools and techniques here, but unfortunately for you guys being very new, this, unfortunately, in learning, going through your first budget, some of this is going to be new and it's probably going to take a little bit of time.
What did it look like last time? Like,
Since
George?
I've been on the committee, we have never had anything in the column that he referred to.
Well, they have. They've recommended the town administrator's budget, but I think in the last couple years, I mean, let's also remember, we've had 2 failed overrides here. So we're in a position now, and I think Ryan and many of you brought this up and said, hey, we're in the position we're in. This is a deeper conversation than we've ever had before on the budget, right? So I think this is uncharted territory, which is fantastic. And I think it's just gonna take a little more time to make sure that all of you can agree on what you wanna recommend. And that may take a couple nights. And you can talk about it now, you can talk about it tomorrow, you can talk about it next Thursday, or you could have other meetings. To Carrie's point, if you wanna set up a Zoom during the day, you can talk about it then.
Just a quick suggestion, I'm going to suggest. So we have this week slated. I think, to Jamie's point, while the information is fresh in our minds, I think it is beneficial for us to have that conversation. I think that tomorrow potentially could be a longer meeting. I don't think we're going to, I mean, based on the number of questions I personally ask, I don't think that it's fair to say we're going to be done in 2 hours. So why don't we reserve the Thursday night one that we had already had on our planning books to do that
That's right.
work?
That's what it was for.
Right?
Yeah.
To kind of go through and say, okay, when I was hearing it, I thought that this needed additional funding, or this needed less funding. And then we have that motion, second, discussion, move, vote, move. And that would be Thursday. So we can dedicate time to look at everything, and I think this is why we postponed it a little bit and didn't do it every night, so that we can look at the budget as a whole. Because sometimes when we're going through the process, we look at line items, we look at different departments, but then we don't look at the budget as a whole. And at the end of the day, our bottom line is not changing. It's just allocating and, reducing where our preference is. So I would suggest that we save Thursday for those discussions.
Let's hear from Natalie.
That was
Yeah.
actually what I was gonna say.
Okay.
So, but I was also gonna ask a question on that. I know we're not allowed to email each other back and forth. Are we allowed to email any information, either like, here is my brain dump on these thoughts, or here is my chart of expenses, so we can have all these things? That'll shorten the meeting, I mean, literally by an hour.
Right, I
Can
agree.
we send that to you to take the open meeting crap out of the meeting? So if everybody would send to Carrie
So not
thoughts
take
for discussion. Huh?
Alternate proposal before we.
Yeah, we can do whatever you want.
Well, so let's close this loop. Just, George, like Natalie asked a question, right? To your point, you can email one-on-one. Like, my name, Natalie could email Jen and say, hey, I appreciate your comment the other night. You can kind of schedule, but you can't really deliberate. So once you get into substance and detail, you start to get down that slippery slope. And I just think that no matter how disciplined people are, all of a sudden the encouragement for a reply to all, or this 8 people are sending emails around, that's a clear violation. It can't be Tom and Jen, Shannon and Ryan, George and John, and they're all emailing back and forth. That's 8 people having a complete deliberation, and it's totally against the law. But what George pointed out is, if you want to send your thoughts on these hearings, or on your positions of what you would cut, what revenues you raise, increase funding, you could do that through the CFO, and she could compile that, and then everybody can wait with bated breath to see what everybody said, and we're gonna pull them out of a hat right live on Thursday night as a suspenseful thing and say, what was each person's position, right? So, you could do it that way. I think on the other hand, given the fact that I agree with Natalie, the transparency has been excellent, and schools have done a fantastic job, in their line item budgeting and all that stuff, I think y'all need to sit here and talk it out. I think y'all, unfortunately, have to sit here and talk it out. You're right, Natalie, it will take a lot longer. It will not be efficient. The sausage being made sometimes is very sloppy in this business, but I think for the video, for YouTube, for everybody that's watching at home, I think they need to hear their finance committee debate these issues, and there's no substitute for, a one member looking at another member, people getting a little uncomfortable, maybe a little agitated, maybe happy, maybe people are thrilled, not just, really, I think the emotional piece in person is very important, especially on a decision like this. So I think y'all have to sit here on Thursday and hammer it out the old-fashioned way.
Could we Okay. structure that? Excuse me. I agree. I think we should sit here and go through the whole thing. I think, and George can jump in on this. We go to the therapy session at the senior center.
They're not
Couple times a week.
therapy.
All right, and what we hear there, and you probably hear it from your friends at the soccer or wherever, the lack of transparency. So I think having the debate, whether we say yay or nay, they can see the logic behind it.
Right.
All right? What I'm confused at, and I just look at the process, we came in here and said, what's the goal? Shouldn't that have been set by the town council?
No,
Why not?
because they've chosen to go through the joint budget subcommittee, you know, they've
But that-
gone through
okay, So
that.
that was their direction.
But, right, but the town charter also makes me,
It's a bottom-up type of approach.
right, so, exactly.
And the other thing, I'm directing it to you.
Yeah.
As you saw, a lot of my questions are trying to generate, where's the revenue? Where's the revenue side? We were going after the expense side.
Yep.
What about revenues that we're missing? What about revenues that you have in the back of your head that we can go after?
If you want to talk about it, I'm just being very blunt.
Yeah.
I've written about this in other memos. I've given a top 10 list to the solutions. I have sucked blood out of rocks for 10 years. There is nothing else that I have in my pocket here. The only other thing, to be honest and transparent about it, is one-time revenues. You could use a sliver of budget stabilization funding.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, but none of it is sustainable revenue sources.
I agree.
So-
But if I look at the enterprise accounts, one thing I have noticed is that a lot of your departments are just salaries.
That's
You
right.
don't do an allocation of fringe benefits.
Well-
So the idea, and I don't know the answer, I'm just asking a question. If an enterprise account is not making money, or is making a little bit of money, can allocate overhead to it? Can I get more value out of that enterprise account?
We do that already, but you gotta be careful, we're not a for-profit business. I know you know that, but I know the private sector principles come into these discussions, and it's all about making money. Even when Kerry told me we were $13,000 over on passports, which is what I exactly hoped she would say, I just hope people don't start challenging these things, because you gotta be careful. We're not here to make money in that sense. We do look at those fringe benefits. Those indirect costs are in the budget. They're offsetting it. So, you know, when we get to enterprise funds tomorrow night with DPW, we should talk about this a little bit more in depth. Tom. I
That
agree.
idea that if I have an opportunity to recoup some costs
Yeah.
legitimately.
You'll see tomorrow night how we really creatively divvy up the salaries of almost every DPW employee. Unless you're a unionized employee on grounds, highway, water, and sewer, almost every other management position is split up among all those accounts to try to offset money off of the operating budget, because we're legally obligated to say 10% of the director's time is to sewer, and we have to charge across those accounts. But that's been a relief on the operating budget. We've been doing that 20 years, right? That's a Jeff Nutting success from 20 years ago. That's in line with what you heard earlier. Get everything you can off the operating budget as much as possible off budget, because no one wanted to do an override for the last 15 years. So we can talk a little bit about that tomorrow night, but I think you'll come away, you know, hopefully pleasantly happy that, that we're maximizing what we can do. But in terms of revenue generation, okay, there's no development that's coming in tomorrow that's gonna save the budget, okay? There's no state aid coming in from the state that's gonna come in and save the budget. Yep, the House and Senate might go a little higher. Maybe we get an extra 60 grand by the time November comes. It ain't gonna shift the numbers all that much. You can use a little more one-time money from budget stabilization funds, you know, but hey, that might get Ryan. You know, if we use the money from budget stabilization from the high-yield interest accounts, and we tapped in the interest that we've received off of those investments, we might get Ryan to his goal of having $1 million in free cash available for other capital stuff. Like, that may be a choice. But I think you all know where this is going.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that that's the hard reality. And we all know where this is going. And yet again, I'll say it yet for the millionth time, it ain't gonna be one in here. Y'all gotta figure out what the strategy is out there. And that's exactly why I propose using free cash to avoid any budget cuts this year to schools or anyone else, because I think that strategy on the pie, on the growing of the pie that Steve Sherlock referenced, this is a bigger question and a harder task that requires a tremendous amount of time and effort than people think it does and what the community's been willing to do before. So all of you are gonna have, maybe not for this discussion, you know, this week, but what is how do we raise more revenue? And how do we maybe pitch that to the community or not? And how do you think you can marinate that in the community? But I think that you have to talk about that at some point, because you can get by this year, right? Maybe with a little bit of cuts, a little bit of free cash, but we're gonna be right, when I put out my 5-year fiscal forecast in August, it's gonna be Bill Murray and Groundhog Day. Here we go. Whoop, there it is again.
Okay.
But I think it's incumbent on us to say that we looked at this. There ain't nothing there.
Right.
Okay, so what's our plan? Let's stop talking in the hypothetical. Let's talk about what is our plan gonna be?
Yep.
So we're going to, are we done with these other guys? All these things?
We're done with
Okay.
those budgets.
So we're done with these. So now, I know we have more stuff tomorrow, but do we think it makes sense to first determine, to your point, what our goal is? Are we gonna try to see if we can come up with a list of cuts? Or is our collective goal to say, there's no cuts, we're gonna stamp it all through? What do you think?
I think that's to be determined Thursday. Based on what, now I'll use Ryan's list, we may just ultimately come to the conclusion that the budgets are just what they are. I don't know. But we gotta talk about it, and maybe, you know, I bet there's some nuggets in there that we can use. And frankly, I think this goes a long way to that transparency issue that we get beat up on constantly. I don't care if it's all about Franklin or the town's website, we get beat up constantly. If anybody doesn't think this has been transparency, they are nuts. Simple and plain, or the more likely thing, they're not paying attention. The high water mark on YouTube tonight was 22. We have 25,000 registered voters in this town, 35,000 registered. We had 22 and, I don't know, 10 people there. So we had 32 people that aren't in the room, that's it. And they know, people are sick of hearing me. I mean, we've had, in 10, 11, 12 years, whatever it's been, 3 people talk to us at a meeting, other than, I'll accept, those 2 guys are here all, you know. But.
So my
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Let's gather Thursday
Okay.
and find out, answer your questions.
So my question is this, and I apologize because I had to go to the bathroom, but are we sending documents to Carrie or not?
Yes.
Well, wait a minute.
What are we sending to her if we?
Anything
Our thoughts.
Ryan's list, for instance, just something to have a beginning.
So we're all, okay, so
I have
that,
nothing,
right,
so
but-
I'll be.
so that means that our plan is that we sort of agree that we're gonna talk about cuts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or increases?
Or,
Yes.
we're gonna talk about it and decide whether they make sense.
Yeah.
So we're all gonna send
If you want
her-
to submit anything.
Anything you want, we just want to
You don't
avoid
have
that
to.
crazy out of meeting.
Could I make an alternate proposal?
You may.
Yeah.
In my world, where, how we would do this, would be instead of inviting someone else to sit there, one of us would sit there. And we would share a screen, and we would work through a list. And it could be Thursday, it could be tonight, it could be tomorrow, like, it doesn't matter when, but we would put everyone's things onto the list,
You have to make
but not by
motions,
emailing them to
right?
Carrie where they come without any explanation. And now we've got some list that, like, we don't really know its intent, but you would state, what were you trying to achieve with your list? And then we would collect all the things, so people had some understanding, just going down the line. And then we would review the whole list and see where did we have overlaps between people, right? We would just say, hey, 3 different people suggested or confirmed they were in line with this one. So, like, it's not a vote, but it's just a note. And then we could go down the list and say, did we have some correlation of goals, or did we all have different goals? And if it was all different goals, we'd probably first have to start there with what do we want to achieve. But if we all had some semblance of a similar goal, then we work down the list to say, do we want to do all of that line item, some of that line item, or none of that line item, up or down? And at the end, we would have recommendations by line item in the budget of what we thought was best. That would be how I would structure a meeting, like a work group with clients to go through it.
So to put this another way, anyone who wants the floor takes the floor, explains their position. We each do that to as many people as want to take the floor to do that. See where there are differences, and then debate on what's the correct path, and then what's the best way to achieve that path.
Ideally with the structure of not just like a paragraph long informational, but more of tied to a line item, I would amend X line item in such
Yes.
a way. But then someone is just collating all of those effectively as just described, writing them all down, saying, hey, they're by budget section line item, then we can order them and go schools, let's look. We can go DPW, let's look what we had. Like we could go once again by department, but not going through the whole budget, just going through our called out line item recommendations to say what adjustments to that department's budget make sense.
Another way is we determine that we only want to take $1 million out of free cash, go to management and say, get me the other $1 million.
I think that's what he's asking us to do.
I look at it a different way. I'm just an advisory committee. They're management.
So to that point, I think it would help the meeting to start by going down the line. What is our goal? Because I think we have different
Yeah.
ones.
Sure.
And what is like after coming out of this, and we have again one more day, I have a thought of how I would put my thoughts together. So I think we start with that, and then we could probably be like, all right, well, does it make sense to do a list or not? Does it make sense to go to the detail or not? And then we dive into that.
Yes, agreed.
Do you think we,
Why don't we start that?
yeah, do you think we can have that?
What would you like?
Do you think we
Oh,
can do
could do
that
that tonight?
today, or do you think we have to?
Yeah.
Could we
I don't-
just say what our positions are?
That's what I'm
tonight?
asking, like, if
Yeah.
we think it'll
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
change
yeah.
significantly on tomorrow or not.
No.
So then, yeah.
You want me to start? No, I don't care, I will.
You don't have to.
I have a position, I'm fine with
Okay.
it. Mine has been very set from the beginning. I am not in favor of using free cash to balance the budget. So for me, it's looking at ways to reduce our impact to free cash. Ultimately, the gold standard would be that we didn't use any, but ultimately, how much can we reduce from other areas to not use free cash? Because for me, that is not a financial strategy I am comfortable with, nor one that I feel is sustainable. And I understand, Jamie, 1 year, but I can't, it's not my thing.
So would you put a list together, is that?
Yeah,
are you
I
on-
have
Are you
one.
on the list plan?
I'm on the list plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that?
But
to
not
be-
just cut, so I think that's
No,
why.
is that all, yeah, right, is that like, is your position that 2.029 million of free cash should not be used at all, and therefore you're gonna either make 2.029 million of cuts and/or maybe more cuts, but actually increase other budgets, however that is?
Yeah, so I think ultimately, it's to not use free cash, but if we don't get to that, reducing it as much as possible, right?
Can I read back what I wrote down and see if that aligns?
I think you should go down
I'm
the
just
line.
reading
I'm
hers.
sorry to
Just try to
interrupt.
capture it.
But you have to
Yeah,
stay,
yeah,
you have to
just
stay
reading back what I
focused here.
summarized hers to say.
You have to stay focused and you have to
Yeah.
make a decision what your goal is.
He's
But
trying
he's
to.
I
only
understand,
fair.
I'm just
He's trying to
reading
record.
back what she said.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not in favor of free cash, want to reduce the budget position to minimize free cash utilization.
Correct.
Like, not saying hard or fast, it has to be zero, or like, just want to reduce
Yes,
towards as low free cash use as we can.
correct. Thank you.
Cool.
You're great. Are you available during the week?
I do this all week.
Wasn't there
Starts at
notes?
7:30, ends at,
Wasn't there a notes
11:30.
taking thing in here that we could reduce,
Yeah.
you could do it?
yeah, where's the AI?
All right, so,
Just speak freely.
Oh,
Don't
okay.
forget what I read.
okay, I'm sorry. I'll screw over here. So I would do it in a probably two-part way. One part being this exact same model, not using free cash, coming up with as close to 2 million in cuts as I could, or revenue generation if I could think of something. Part B, maybe that has more than one part, would be asking then all of the departments to put together real budgets that have the things that they would, the extra teachers they would like, the extra police officers they would like, what their true position is, not in a magical world where everybody has all the money ever, but in a realistic world where they are putting themselves in a good position to run. And including those things that you had listed, like the police cars we need every year.
Capital.
The capital expenses, the real capital expenses. And then I would use the cuts plus the real budget to then put a position forward for a new override push after. So there'd be a year of cuts. In a list, similar to, so that first part is same.
So. You're thinking long-term, so her part B is long-term, right?
Yes, short-term, long-term.
Yeah,
It's a
so what I
short-term,
had
long-term.
was not in favor of free cash use, reduce budget position to minimize free cash position. Additionally, look to publish a list for departments to come back with a realistic, what would they have had in their budget if we were doing this towards an override?
Yes, so short-term, long-term, yes, thank you. Why don't you go next, so we keep it in
Yeah.
order?
Let me write. I'm
You
writing
two are
it
gonna be
down, I'll figure it out.
separated. I'm gonna change the seats.
Go ahead,
These two need to be separated.
I really, at this point, I'll abstain. I have some real, I have a real issue with not cutting. Fully, we need to, but taking and ripping school department's budget to tell them how to run the schools. That's a concern for me. I trust the department heads here. I don't think that there's legitimate junk in the budget. Really don't, to any degree. I mean, we could go find money, that's not an issue. We could go to the police chief or the fire chief or the schools and say, cut $100 grand. They would find it, there's something there where they can find it. I'll abstain from this.
You won't though.
It's a- I was gonna say, that's a position.
So what I have,
Pretty good.
what I have there is.
I've been through too many of these to know, and we've never been taken advantage of, is maybe a bad way to say it. Never have we had a budget presented that somebody said, I could really make it smaller, but I'll give you this.
That's, George, that's an amazing position. It's not a
Yeah.
lack of position. It's, you look to the departments with trust. You want to acknowledge and respect the effort they've put in by confirming the budgets they've put forth. That's,
And, you know,
100%
some
fair.
nominal stuff, we say 10, not 10%, $100,000. Without the three-person departments. The big 5 or
Yeah.
6 or whatever it is, could find $100 grand. I'm sorry, they could. They didn't intentionally put an extra $100 grand in there, but it happens.
Yeah.
That's where I am.
I am also I think that's kind of in line of maintaining the budget as is. I do like the scrutiny of looking at the potential expenses as a learning tool for the community, but I think I don't love the thought of putting any more undue stress. Like any of those cuts causes a little bit more stress to the town, like these departments. And that on top of all of the years of stress and continued cuts is not something that I'm comfortable with. I don't love the fiscal responsibility piece of pulling in 2 million, but in this case, for me, it's worth it. But hopefully we could use the review, the scrutiny, again, as a way to educate the community.
Can I re-add amended PS? I also think about if what, other than capital, what in hell are we gonna do with free cash? It just can't sit there forever. I understand that we have a winter and we got 7 million inches of snow, but there's gotta be a finer definition of what happens to free cash if it doesn't happen like this, other than buying stuff. And that's basically what we do. We buy stuff, so. All right, that was a PS in my rant. Next.
Just to, for everyone, so I want to avoid undue stress on departments, not comfortable with making that worse on the departments with cuts, but would prefer to publish a perspective on expenses for community awareness.
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Thank you for your
That's what I was thinking. So generally, happy that we have a balanced budget on the table. I would like to see the amount of free cash reduced. I don't think it's a sustainable approach to the budget. And in doing that, I would be open to cuts to expenses, maybe vacant positions, but I don't want to see any cuts to personnel.
Would it be fair to say that that was maybe a similar to first, but maybe in a softer sense of like not maybe looking to go as deep, but generally like with some parameters looking to minimize the use of free cash? Okay.
Yeah, I would say also probably falls somewhere in the middle. Pretty concerned with using free cash to plug holes. I don't like that. I also get the thing where we've been through a lot the past several years. We've already made a lot of cuts, and the budget is kind of at bare bones. It is starting to cut into the bone a little bit. So I don't have an exact number. I agree that staff reductions isn't the answer here. For me, maybe it's some of the stuff we have added back that didn't exist last year is where we'd probably take a look. That said, some of those things are also, we're adding them back for a reason. And they've made a couple remarks to that yesterday on some of those. Not exactly sure what the correct number is, but I think there's probably a little bit here, but wouldn't go as far to say is that no free cash should be used in this manner.
I think that's generally aligned to minimize the use of free cash, avoid staff reductions, but look to minimize staff additions.
Yeah.
I'm kind of in that mindset. I have to agree, I think there's not much here. I do think the detail is phenomenal. I do think that we should look at all these potential items, debate them, so the public's aware of them. We may end up $200,000. But I think the idea that we looked at everything, we debated it, and we made a decision that it's in the best interest of the community. You know, because don't forget, government's here to serve. And that, on average, Carrie, on average, what is the free cash that is generated every year? What is that average?
4.5.
4.5 million on average.
Yep.
Okay. So again, the idea that we have, if we were to look at every year, we use $2 million of free cash, there's always going to be a buildup.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? So if maybe tomorrow, you can give us a history of the last 4 years, 5 years.
There's an appendix in the.
There is an appendix?
Yeah.
I hate to say it, it's on the website.
I don't know which appendix it was, you know. And is that going to be our policy, that we're going to use X every year? Yeah, because we're not a bank.
I guess to build on that and just kind of like role of government, and I just, the one comment that, and this is probably more of just a messaging thing about like making residents feel the pain. I would disagree with that just a bit in terms of like, I don't think that's what local government should be doing. We should be kind of funding the services we can within the constraints that the voters have provided us. I realize there's probably like a timing discrepancy there if we're able to fill holes, you don't feel the impact multiple years down the road. But fundamentally from like a purpose or messaging standpoint, I'm not fully on board with kind of that as the outline.
I just want to say that this isn't an emotional discussion. So that kind of feels like an emotional response. Not that you're being emotional, but that when we say they need to feel the pain, it's not a mean, emotional, I want you to hurt.
No, but
That's
it's
not what's being said. What's being said is we keep plugging these holes and putting Band-Aids on every year because, and what the community sees, what the community comes back with, you said it, Tom, is that they're just gonna figure it out. They will find the money. The reason the community thinks we'll find the money is because we always do, but just not in a fiscally healthy way. So it's not an emotional statement of, I want people to suffer and be upset. I want people to live in the real world that we are living in. I can't, if I don't. Right, if my kids are starving and I'm about to be evicted, I can't be out there purchasing a helicopter.
So I think that's a valid problem that, we've talked about this, people don't necessarily see the consequences, but I don't think the question is if we're shopping for a Bentley. I think the analogy we said earlier, 20% of the lights aren't on. I guess for me, I don't agree with messaging kind of the problems we are facing through the budget. I would rather message that in some manner directly to people, not like we didn't have 20% of the lights on, even though we had the ability to do that, but we're withholding that ability so you can understand that your vote has a consequence.
I don't think that withholding implies that we have it, and we're just being jerks about keeping it back.
Well, we do, right? We might not like the avenue we're using to achieve that, but we do have the free cash. We have the ability to fund those 20% of lights.
But we're just continuing, it's just a Band-Aid. I guess we just disagree on how we.
It absolutely is a
how
Band-Aid.
the long-term impact of how we get to, you can't say on one hand, we need to fill the hole, but then on the other hand, I'm not saying you're saying this, I'm saying if someone's saying on one hand, we should use this money to plug this hole, and then on the other hand say, we need people to get on board with an override, they won't.
If I may, I think maybe we went too far on the analogy of like the lights, like it was just the simple.
Yes,
like,
yes,
I think
yes.
we're over-rotating on that. The point was more that like we've made
Sure.
the bed as a town, and we now need to some degree, sleep in it. Now, I agree that one way to do that would be to use free cash and then acknowledge as a town that the way we're making it palatable is by using a source of revenue that is unsustainable, like a source of income that's unsustainable. That is one way, and I think the other way that's being discussed is we could also not add things back that we haven't done something to refund, right? And then another way would be to cut things in addition, and you could use any combination of those things. Those are all levers available, but the point was more like that we don't really have any increased acknowledgement of what has happened if we only fix problems with free cash, and that pathway doesn't self-correct. In time, the problem grows, and your 4.5 this year might cover it, but next year you need 3 of that, and the year after you need 4 of that. And by the way, the fire truck now, you can't afford at all because you used, so it's not like a today, and your point is very valid, of like, we can solve the problem today, and we can do a great messaging and communication campaign to get people aware that we had to solve it abnormally, and they still need an override. Like, that's something that could happen. So I'm not like saying it can't. I just think there's other perspectives being shared about how we could do that in different ways.
Yeah, so
and I
like
guess if I could, just before I didn't state mine.
Well,
So I'll just come back. I've come all the way around, and I think I started by saying I kind of wanted to go no free cash. And I think the way I ended up forming my list, I want to use not only the existing free cash, but the additional 150,000 that's in there. But with doing that, like what I ended up putting on my list, and you guys have heard me say it a number of times, is also to make the budget whole by doing, like acknowledging we're using a strange source of funding, but also put the right things into the budget. So those things that we were paying for with free cash have to go in with it. So not saying that we're going to take all our capital expenditures and put them in, but the cruisers, the Chromebooks, putting some money into our ICE stabilization fund, which is really something we should be doing and operating every year, should move with that. In order to make that all work, it's adding about $1 million in cost. And then I think there's a couple other line items we could get into of like some school curriculum stabilization and maybe some facility stuff. But then like, how do we come up with that additional? We would still end up with a gap because we're saying the free cash was for something, we've moved it in. We moved the things that we were using it for that shouldn't have been there into, and now we're solving a more holistic problem. So still using the free cash, still like plugging the hole to the extent possible, but not plugging it without the things we were sure we were going to use it for next year. And I think that's where I would go similarly to some of the other points of like not adding new staff, right? Like not cutting existing. Like I don't think cutting current roles is the way to go about that. Like I don't want to fire people to solve this year's problem when maybe we do an override next year and that's silly. But hiring net new, when we haven't introduced net new, to me seems irresponsible, I think.
Well, I think you have to evaluate each position.
Sure, I have a particular list of ones I would
Each
propose.
position can have its own benefit.
Yes.
I mean.
And to that point, like I
Yeah.
don't have the deputy administrator on that list. Like I think that one actually is valid, and to the revenue generation point, like that one isn't on my list. It could be on somebody else's, but it wasn't on mine. I had, certain things. I think OPEB contribution is on mine, of like, if we don't do that, like nobody actually suffers from that. We could reduce that significantly without any negative, but like some spot positions in there, we saw additions that were more, I want to restore to pre-override failure state. And I think those were the ones I would look to. That was lengthy, but like I think it generally aligns separately as use the free cash with some of its normal purposes going with it. But,
That's great.
sorry.
No, that's fine. I mean.
John was saying something,
Yeah.
and I paused him to.
Yeah, I guess my point there is not that, like, we shouldn't minimize the use of free cash from like a fiscal policy standpoint. I think a lot of it makes sense. Mine is probably more just the rationale, the messaging for why we might choose to or to not do something. If it's for fiscal policy or responsibility reasons, or we want to keep dry powder for uncertainty, totally on board with that. I am a little less comfortable with the.
Yeah, it's not a feel the pain, like,
Yeah,
eye to your face. I think the analogy got too far.
But that's a point I think I
Yeah.
would like to make clearly that that's
Totally.
not where we're trying to
Yes.
go with that.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Probably was said more flippantly earlier by myself and maybe others, but like that, then we met. So I think it's a very good clarification. It was more of a, this is a slippery slope.
And I hate to add another twist. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's another, is there a cash budget we have to be aware of? Some type of cash inflows, outflows that aren't represented in the expense lines, that we may have to pay off something? It could be an issue with the
The self-insurance, I think the big issue is really is leaving the essentially self-insured health consortiums.
You're gonna have a runoff on that?
Well, yeah, but we're not gonna know that until the fall, because we get all our prescription rebates and all the stop loss and all the other stuff. We're gonna hold up that payment until we know every single credit and dollar is there, so we're not paying back that district money that we don't owe them. So that's an issue that, is down the line. That's actually one of the reasons why I asked the council to withhold ratifying the OPEB contribution at that time, because I think once we get out of the healthcare consortium and we're done with that, then we're kind of moving on and putting that behind of us, and then we can kind of pivot back to OPEB. But I also don't know what that deficit will be. I'm sure there will be a deficit. I don't know, but I can't guarantee you there'll be one. It's been like this over the year. It's hard to say. We're just going to have to wait and see how those healthcare numbers come out in a couple months. But that's the only thing I can think of. I don't think of anything else from a cash flow.
What about on the pension? Do you have to fund the pension?
Yep, it's in the budget.
That's in the budget?
The budget, our obligation for
Cash is the
FY '27 is already in the thing you've reviewed.
Okay.
Yep.
Because if we're looking at the idea of the expense side and using some free cash, is there any cash outlays that we should be aware of.
Yeah.
That may be an issue.
Can I just mention one thing?
Sure.
Oops.
Hi again. So one really quick thing, when you mentioned, restoring some of that free, instead of using free cash for like cruises and whatnot, just keep in mind that the money that you already gave them this year is for like the cruises and Chromebooks. And what you spend up until November, after November, you can't spend it until it gets certified for the following year. So there's kind of like a little bit of a squeeze in there, because we just don't have that free cash forever. So just keep that in mind.
Sorry, I have just one quick comment, maybe question as well, and it has to do with the capital versus expense discussion that was happening earlier. So I was in the industry for 40 years and had to do many, many budgets, and it's kind of drilled into my head, and I'm surprised that none of you mentioned it. Is it an accounting guideline to sort of ask the question, is the useful period of life for the thing that you're talking about purchasing, is it more or less than 1 year? Because that was always what we were told to do, is if it's less than 1 year, it's expense. If it's more than 1 year, it's capital, because then you depreciate it as well over several years rather than one. Isn't that a general guideline that the town should be using as well?
I think in our previous discussion, we had landed on, it's not really an accounting differentiation here. It's more of a budget to budget differentiation, because we're not depreciating the items. Like, there's not some valuation that goes with them. So it's less about, because that was, I think, that I had come into that as well, of like, we should be, the excavator like has to be, the police cruiser has to be. But I think it was more, you could put that stuff in your operating budget, and then still, from accounting practices, if you needed to depreciate it for some reason for credits or something, you could still do that regardless of which budget it sat in, and vice versa. So it was less bound by those rules drawing the line. I could be wrong, but I think that's...
It does get depreciated.
Yeah. So we work with our auditors and useful life.
But, and you could do that even if it's in the operating budget.
Understood,
Yeah.
yes.
What's the threshold? Do you like 10,000, 50,000?
It's about 10,000.
10,000? 10,000, below 10,000 is expense?
Correct.
Anything else? This is going to be
Motion to adjourn?
Uh,
Oh, we're not done yet?
He's not ready. The horse is not dead.
As the other chairman, and he would say non-debatable, but we'll...
And I'll take my lines.
Is the room upstairs more, it's a round table. Is that more conducive to a discussion versus this?
You could.
Just a...
Can the public
There's a
fit?
conference.
There's chairs.
Yeah, that's-
I was having that exact same. It's a second meeting room. It's a little smaller.
On Thursday.
Talk to each other.
Yeah, I just...
For Thursday,
This is
not tomorrow, but Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah.
This is very formal.
We'll check the calendar.
To be looking at each.
Is it open?
No, it's not open.
Yeah.
We moved
Conservation.
conservation upstairs because of this meeting
So
on Thursday.
we'll
I'm
swap.
very efficient. I did it all. So I have to move back.
So we'll swap them
Just
out.
untie the knot, that's...
I'm sure they'll love to come back down here. Conservation.
It was just a thought, and I...
It's fine.
That's a good point for
You
Thursday.
already have.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there
Oh, I see.
a way to share,
Chris Flint's
kind of
That's-
like a computer screen or a whiteboard or something in there?
Is there a projector capability up there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is, okay.
Yep.
Fully
There's an owl up there too, I think.
Don't need an owl.
Right?
Yep.
Oops, here comes Steve.
Yeah, if I may, it is a fully functioning studio, yes, set up slightly differently, but it's fully functioning, fully positioned. You'll have similar microphones, so it won't be that different, but that was going to be one of the suggestions I would have made too, because yes, you can set the table in more of a square, so you're all more equal as opposed to at one end or another, and facilitate the discussion. And I applaud that, because you're going to have some interesting and serious discussions, and people need to listen, and that's going to be recorded well, so, yes.
This is a public meeting upstairs, correct? So
It's already
the public is...
It's already posted.
I will,
Is that something we want to stick our communications director on?
Nope, we're gonna stick Carrie on it.
it's like, that's,
Oh, I meant putting it out on social media.
she's been, Liz's plan is every day, the night
Okay.
before is going out. So I can talk to her.
I love, did you see I'm sorry I sent you a football thing, but I had two going out. The actual graphic was, I suggested to her this morning, and an hour and a half later it was there. So,
Can't believe Minatary made the kick.
huh?
Made the kick.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.